when he worked for Bill Clinton. It's the economy, stupid, as in, the fact that inflation is at a 40-year high in the United States, just like it is in Canada. Gasoline prices skyrocketing, the cost of groceries skyrocketing. That's going to be more important than any niche ideological issue. But the Democrats in the States, as Joe Pollock often tells us, Joe Biden is the face of a kindly old man, but his policies are those of the woke squad. They truly are radical. And that's just out of sync. I mean, I just think just the other day, less than 2 weeks to the midterm elections, Democrats trailing badly. And Joe Biden has a real sit down with a trans activist, and really goes through that trans lifestyle. And I'm just thinking that is not what they care about in the Rust Belt. That's not what they care about in the Southwest. That's not what they care about in New York City. They care about crime. I was talking to Ina Vernikov, one of the local city councilwomen there. People don't want to take the subway because it's dangerous again. That is a 1970s feeling. New York dangerous before it was cleaned up. New Yorkers remember.
Cleaned up by whom?
Yeah,
by
Rudy
a Republican.
Giuliani and continued on by Bloomberg. And the Democrats, and I know New York City is under the domain of a mayor, but it's been a left-wing mayor, and they've got the left-wing governor, and they both don't give a damn about crime because they have private bodyguards and private security and bulletproof limos and private jets because the governor of New York's sort of a big deal. So it's going to be fascinating. I mean, I don't know, because the thing about flipping a blue state, Sheila, and in the States, blue is Democrat. In Canada, blue we associate with the Conservative Party, but in the States it's the opposite. The thing about flipping a blue state red, which could happen in Pennsylvania today on the Senate side, could happen theoretically in New York on the governor's side. You have Georgia, the Senate seat in play. You've got Arizona, a lot cooking there. I would call that a purple state.
Yep.
As if it is a Democrat state, the Democrats control the machinery of the election itself. Mail-in voting, digital counting, take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days to count, revise the numbers as needed. Like, if one of the problems with being a Republican is you've got to win not just by a squeaker, you've got to win beyond the margin of lawyer, and now you've got to win beyond the margin of cheating, beyond the margin of mail-in ballots.
Yep.
But I sense that there is a reckoning. We're hearing the phrase red wave. We're hearing things from the Latino community that they're moving to Republicans big time, partly over the woke issues. Calling them Latin X doesn't connect with them. In fact, it sort of replaces their centuries or millennia of culture with some. Imagine if someone called the Jewish community just cooked up some weird new name for that, or the Chinese community or any other ethnic community, gave them a woke name and said, no, we are going to call you this thing like cisgender. We're going to make up a new word like cisgender for you, and you're going to like it. And like, it's just so crazy the things that the Democrats thought were important.
We'll replace your culture with our own nonsensical made-up culture is what's happening there. It's cultural colonialization. And it's interesting because the Democrats have learned nothing since they had their asses handed to them in Virginia. Yeah. When the Democrats campaigned on these nonsensical things, and what happened was the Republicans were able to mobilize normal people, moms, dads, people who want to get left alone, people who don't want this weird gender ideology taught to their kids, people who don't want critical race theory, people who are worried about the cost of groceries and the problems with emptying the strategic supply of oil into the economy instead of allowing drilling. The Democrats have learned nothing since Virginia, and they actually continue to double down on the mistakes that they made in Virginia.
Virginia, that's a great reminder. That was an off-year election. Glenn Youngkin, and he won on meat and potatoes issues. In his case, one of the big issues was the wokeness in the schools. He won by being normal. Yeah, and that was a state that I think Biden won in 2020 by 11 points, going from memory here. Like, it was a significant gap. And I'm very excited. I mean, we're almost ready to talk to our friend Yankee Pollock, who's at the Ron DeSantis headquarters.
And
the reason why I'm excited, because first of all, I think that's the best governor in America. Second of all, Yankee has, he's down there in Florida. Third of all, the movement of Latinos towards not just Republicanism, but Trumpy, MAGA, ultra MAGA Republicanism is amazing to behold. And remember, Florida is a very Latino state. There's lots of, it's not just Cubans, it's other folks too. And they hate the socialism talk of the Alexander Ocasio-Cortezes. And they love Ron DeSantis just comment. I'm very excited to see Miami-Dade. I think that's the largest county in Florida by population. I'm just guessing. And it's traditionally been, a lot of these states, you have lots of red suburbs, but you've got that one big blue city that just dominates everything. That was what Miami-Dade always was for the Democrats. It was the firewall. Sure, you can win up there in Jacksonville and on the Panhandle and other right-wing places like Naples, but you'll never take our fortress of Miami-Dade. Well, I think that fortress might fall. And just as the Democrats used to talk about painting Texas blue, turning Texas blue, God forbid, I think the Republicans are going to make Florida Republican for a very long time. I see there's a super chat. And by the way, I just want to tell people they can do super chats not on YouTube because they're punishing us, but on other forums like Rumble. And Attack 178 says, Gugawaba here from the formerly great state of Washington in the Seattle area. The Democrat Fascist Party is about to get a rude awakening today, even with their failed efforts to steal. Veritas. Well, you know what? You're in. You're going to have. You're going to enjoy our chat with Katie Davis-Court because she is based in the Seattle area herself. Now, Sheila, I saw for.
Speaking of which, sorry, before you go on. Speaking of which, the Democrat efforts to steal. I don't know if we can say these things because, on YouTube, they get pretty touchy about election integrity talk. But right now, as we speak, Republicans are suing Maricopa County in Arizona. I just knew that hinky stuff would come out of Arizona because Kari Lake is just so darn Trumpy and strong there. But the RNC and candidates on top of the ticket are asking a judge to require Arizona's largest county with the most votes to extend voting times until 10 p.m. local time to allow anyone standing in line by 10 p.m. to receive and cast a ballot. I think they had some problems with the voting machines here. Yeah, the lawsuit was brought in response to problems at polling sites in Phoenix. So already hinky stuff has started.
Now, Efren and Olivia, I don't know if you can find it quickly, but I saw a video on Twitter of a couple of election officials there explaining what went wrong with the machine. And it's Brazil, which is, I think, the fourth most populous country in the world. I think it goes China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, or something. It's a huge country. They managed to count their votes in one night. And it's not the most modern, it's a fairly modern country, but it's not as developed as America. America used to have its results a lot faster, but this whole mail-in system and then the digital counting system, it's a step backwards. It's a step towards opacity, not transparency. And that same New York Times poll that I referenced earlier, the one that showed that only 0.5% of people care about the pandemic, a significant number of Americans, I'm talking about a third, are worried about election integrity, not just in general, but in the midterms tonight. Like I say, the Republicans don't just have to win. They have to win beyond the margin of cheating, beyond the margin of whoopsies. We forgot these ballots, whoopsies. And I don't know. I'm a little nervous about it, frankly, because I remember that sinking feeling I had on 2020 when suddenly Pennsylvania and other states were no longer red, and it just. I remember when the vote counters in one state just said, "Oh, we're going home now.
We're going to bed.
It's late." And we don't have anything really pressing. It's not like Halley's Comet, once every 4 years we got to, you know what, we'll finish this in the days ahead. Unbelievable. Do we have a connection with our friend? Yeah, that's the video there. Do you want to play that for a second? These two guys, I'm filled with a loathing of them. Their smugness, like they didn't have 2 years to prepare for this, like they didn't know. Like this is like wedding day. There is nothing for an elections boss to do other than prepare for the election. There's nothing else. It is like getting married. And it's like forgetting the ring or forgetting the wedding dress or forgetting the cake. You know, there's a short list of things. You have one thing to do. Get the election going. Well, guys, you know, I got this complicated explanation. And no. Bear with me. You got to hear this. You got to hear this. Take a look at this video that these two maroons had. Take a look.
Hello, Maricopa County. I'm Bill Gates, the chairman of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors.
And I'm Stephen Richard, the Maricopa County Recorder.
And we're here to give you an update on how things are going so far with the election. We've already had almost 44,000 people show up this morning, check in, and be available to vote. And things are going great out there, but there's one thing that we wanted to address to make people aware of today, and that has to do with our tabulators. We've got about 20% of the locations out there where there's an issue with the tabulator, where some of the ballots that after people have voted them, they try and run them through the tabulator and they're not going through. But the good thing is we do, first of all, we're trying to fix this problem as quickly as possible. And we also have a redundancy in place. If you can't put the ballot in the tabulator, then you can simply place it here in where you see the number 3. And this is a secure box where those ballots will be kept for later this evening, where we'll bring them in here to Central Count to tabulate them.
So this would function much like early voting functions, in that we would get your ballot back. Once we've signature verified it, we would send it to our central tabulators. Ballots that are in here will already be, in effect, signature verified, so we won't.
Hi guys, yeah, it's us again. You won't believe this. You got to hear this. You had 2 years. You had 2 years.
Yeah.
How about just get a bunch of little pencils? You know, the little ones. You don't even need the long ones. You can get the little pencils and maybe a pencil sharpener, a bunch of paper ballots, and just put a little X in it, and then count them. And it would be a lot of votes to count if you counted the whole county at once, but luckily you break it into different polling areas. How about that, guys? How about that? Now, I hear in the background, and I see our friend Yankee Pollock, who is at the world headquarters of the governor of the great state of Florida. Yankee, how you doing over there?
Great. I just arrived. I arrived a bit late here because apparently they held a Bulls game tonight, or they're starting it right now, right downtown, right near the convention center. But I'm here. It's amazing. We're waiting for results. I don't think Florida's closed yet, or they just did. It's going to be an amazing night, I predict. I don't think anyone else is predicting in this year.
You know what? I pity any Democrat who had to run against Ron DeSantis this time. There was this one candidate named Nikki Fried who I really enjoyed watching her run because she was sort of awkward and cringy but didn't care, and I just really loved that. It was like watching Elaine Bennis of Seinfeld dance, watching Nikki Fried campaign. She was just free. She was her true self. And she was on TikTok, which I really enjoy. And when you have anyone over 20 trying to do the TikTok moves and TikTok memes, it's a little cringy. And Nikki Fried, who I think is in her early 40s, she looks great. But to have her do these kidsy things, it was like watching a car crash. And I was really sad that she lost the primary to Charlie Crist, who is really the worst perennial candidate. Switching parties, switching views. Ron DeSantis, I'm going to make a prediction. Ron DeSantis by 15%.
That's about right.
50% would be right. You know, and I always think what would have been, and I know you say the same. If DeSantis, if votes switched by 20,000 votes the other way, DeSantis would not be governor right now. And how would Florida look? But also the entire free world, because I really think that when Florida opened, Texas started opening, and Florida was never really locked down, but when DeSantis was like enough, he started fighting all the counties that did do mandates and stuff. That's when the world saw that you could be open and you know, you can continue living. You're not going to die by living life. And that's what DeSantis showed, and that's why I think he's going to win by a lot. And I think the whole free world owes him a gratitude for that.
I think you're exactly right, and thank God for it. Like you said, just a sliver of a fraction of a percent, and what a great leader he's become. And you can tell he's a good leader because Donald Trump, who I largely agree with and largely like, obviously feels that DeSantis is some sort of competitor because the other day, and I don't know if we have this clip, Olivia and Efron, but the other day at a rally, for Republicans, Donald Trump indulged himself and gave Ron DeSantis one of his special mean nicknames. And Trump is good with the nicknames because he gets something that sort of sticks to you, like low energy Jeb. That's a long nickname, but it's stuck because it's true. Or crooked Hillary. I didn't like Lion Ted Cruz, but it stuck to him. Or Little Marco. Oh, that's like, he's just like, you could tell he was such a rough kid when he was growing up in New York City. And I don't know if we've got that clip, but here's Trump being a little bit mean towards Ron DeSantis. Here's the nickname he gave Ron DeSantis. Take a look.
Trump at 71, Ron DeSanctimonious at 10%, Mike Pence at 7. Oh, Mike's doing better than I thought.
Both of those little dashes there. Mike's at 7%. He's doing better than I thought. Now, why did he call Ron DeSanctimonious? Now, I think it sort of clicks because there's not a lot of things DeSanctimonious. It sort of clicks. I don't think Ron DeSantis is particularly sanctimonious, but let's say it's true and let's say it sticks. Whatever. Why is Trump jabbing at the most successful Republican governor in America? Well, because he's the most successful Republican governor in America, and there's a real chance that he throws his hat in the ring for 2024. And Trump knows that. And yes, Trump is in the lead, definitely, amongst all these straw polls. But number two, not that far behind, is Ron DeSantis. So I thought that was very interesting. That's a credit to DeSantis that Trump considers him a rival.
Yeah, well, he tried that once, and he didn't really get an applause. And yesterday, I watched the rally because there was debates if Trump will announce his run tomorrow, yesterday, and ultimately he didn't. And he endorsed DeSantis yesterday, and I think in a different rally, on Sunday, he also endorsed DeSantis, and today he said he voted for DeSantis. So he definitely tried it. It didn't work. He moved on. I'm sure he'll come back with a new one. He'll come up with a new jab if DeSantis doesn't decide to run in 2024. But we'll see. I speak with a lot of people. I was at a DeSantis rally on Sunday. A lot of voters, obviously they're DeSantis voters, they're Trump fans. In this election season, they were split. Some were saying DeSantis should run in 24, others saying Trump 24, DeSantis 28. So it would be a tough call who would actually win. I don't know, and only time will tell who from the two of them would, if they would even go head to head. I'm still of the belief that they will not go head to head, but we shall see.
Of course, the question is who will run for the Democrats in 2024 if Joe Biden lives long enough to make it to 24, and he's declining before our eyes. I don't know if you watched the Game of Thrones sequel called House of Dragons, but the king, and I don't mean to be too sci-fi, but I did watch the House of Dragons, and the king Viserys, just how he basically rots over time before your very eyes and becomes more and more decrepit. That is our Mad King Joe Biden, who's just falling apart before our eyes. And you have some news there. Polls have closed. Is that what you're about to say?
No, I was going to say that Gavin Newsom, I think, is going to be the front runner for the Democrats.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say it ain't Biden, and you're saying the pretender is Gavin Newsom from California. You know what? I think that's a very good guess because I don't think Kamala Harris is liked by anybody. And it's not going to be Pete Buttigieg. And, of course, Hillary Clinton might want a third kick at the can. It'll be very interesting. Sheila, who do you think is going to run for the Democrats in 2024?
Who is that perpetual loser in Texas all the time?
Beto O'Rourke.
Beto O'Rourke. You know what? I think they might. With him. Again, they just can't help themselves.
Stacey Abrams?
Stacey Abrams. We'll see how she does tonight. Well, Yankee, listen, great to see you. Thanks for joining us live from the DeSantis HQ. If you're still there, and I hope you stay for a bit, even just to have fun for yourself, but I hope we can check in with you a little bit later. It is almost 8 o'clock Eastern, which is, I think, when the polls close there. I think we'll know pretty soon how DeSantis does. I don't think it's going to be close. It wouldn't surprise me.
I voted today.
There you go. There's our friend
And
Yankee.
I just need to tell Sheila the weather is beautiful down here.
Hang up on him. Hang up on him.
All right, there he is, Yankee Pollock. Thanks very much for joining us. It's very fun to have him at DeSantis headquarters. I am a little bit jealous because it is.
100%.
It's not that cold in Toronto, but I know it's chilly out west. Well, Sheila, we don't just have our friend Yankee in Florida, but we have a great reporter who really goes deep into things. He's been with us a number of months now. His name is Jeremy Lafredo, and he is based in New York City. And you would never in a million years think that New York would vote for anyone other than a Democrat. Now, true, they voted for Rudy Giuliani, who really was a Republican, and Michael Bloomberg was sort of a moderate Democrat who called himself a Republican. But we're not talking about the city now. We're talking about the state. And remember, they had that Me Too sex scandal involving Governor Cuomo, who was sort of replaced. So the incumbent governor, I think I'm pronouncing her last name right, Hochul,
Yeah.
she was not voted by the people, and she's got sort of a, she can be a little grating to some people. I think that's a matter of taste, of course. But I think that crime is the issue there, because so many New Yorkers remember the bad old days, remember how long it took to clean it up. You can, it's like making things or breaking things. I often contemplate that. How hard would it be to make a light bulb versus how quickly could you smash one? Sometimes things take great, great care to make, but can be broken quickly. And I think the safety of a city, for 2 decades, New York City was the safest big city in the free world. It just was. And you felt it. And it is no longer that way. And when even city councilmen like Ina Vernikov are afraid to take the subway, things have fallen. I see Jeremy Lafredo standing by now. Let's go to him. Jeremy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Well, great to see you. My friend Sheila Gunn-Reid is with me, and you're in New York City tonight, I take it.
I'm in New York, yes.
Well, now, you can tell us, because we're not there and you are, what are the real issues on the street? I know there's pet progressive issues, whether it's transgenderism or Roe v. Wade, and I'm not saying those are not important issues. I have strong opinions on them myself. But for people who are not political hyperactivists like you and me and Sheila, for severely normal people, I got to think that the economy and crime are top of mind issues in New York. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Definitely. What they're saying right now is, other than murder, crime is not on the rise in New York, which is not, not the best way to look at things. Crime is definitely on the rise in New York, and people from all walks of life feel it. Whether you're a progressive, you might not admit it. But, everyone knows that crime is on the rise here. It's dangerous in your nicest neighborhoods and in your not so nice neighborhoods. And I also think, other than crime, you have, COVID, whether or not it's still, here circulating. This is the epicenter. We had 10,000 small businesses closed just in this city. People were put out of work. People saw the CARES Act get passed, which is, trillions and trillions of dollars of taxpayer money, American taxpayer money, getting given to corporations who were at the same time censoring people and forcing the jabs on people. People are not happy with progressives, I think, in New York, and I think Lee Zeldin has a good chance right now against Kathy Hochul.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Kathy Hochul, because, of course, I think the whole world followed Governor Cuomo and his brother. It was quite a tag team, the governor and then his brother at CNN. And he was sort of the COVID hero, at least to the left he was. He was the lockdown king, and they were swooning about him. But then he was sort of hustled out of there over a series of Me Too accusations. And he says that, he said, no, that's just me. I'm a touchy-feely Italian-American. I hug, I kiss. And it's tough to know on these things because he said, she said, but hey, the Democrats made the rules. And the rules are, if there's an accusation, you believe them. So he was hustled out of there. I think he protests that it wasn't democratic. Kathy Hochul was installed. So am I right? So she hasn't actually faced the electorate before for this office. Am I right?
You're entirely correct. She's not leading New York democratically. She's never been voted by anyone. And it was interesting when our last governor got, kicked out. It was because, maybe he touched someone, maybe he hugged someone too long, this or that. But at the same time, he was responsible for, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of old care facility deaths, all of our grandmas and grandpas. He was at the forefront of that scandal. So it's funny that you get kicked out for maybe touching somebody, but not because you killed tens of thousands of elderly people. And then you're replaced with someone who was not even elected. So the people of New York really have not had good leadership in several years with this governor or the last one.
Yeah, I forgot about that, and I shouldn't forget about that, because he literally sent sick people into senior centers to store them. When I knew that the pandemic was overblown, that it wasn't going to turn the world into a zombie movie, was when Donald Trump mustered the two giant hospital ships, one in New York and one in Los Angeles, these enormous military floating hospitals that were built for hundreds and hundreds of casualties in a war. And those ships were parked off each coast, and they were never used. They were never needed. And I knew then that we had been sold a pig in a poke. Hey, I want to show you something, because I couldn't even believe it. And let me invite Olivia and Efron to find the clip of Kathy Hochul speaking at a Christian group, I presume, about how she wanted them to be their apostles, and Jesus would say, take the vax. Efron and Olivia, I don't know if you saw that. I retweeted it the other day. You could find it pretty quick. But I just sent you on Slack a picture of Kathy Hochul with her necklace. Now, some people have a cross or a Star of David on a necklace. A lot of women have their name on a necklace. It's usually a gift given to them. You can have a heart there. But you see Kathy Hochul's necklace there? Can you read that? It says vaxxed.
Gross.
I swear to you.
That's her religion.
That is what she... Because, of course, that's her religion. That's her totem. That's her touchstone. That's, some people touch the rosary and they pray. Some people touch a cross. Jews sometimes kiss a mezuzah when they walk in a house. High tech, high touch. People touch things. What's important to them? They have something in their pocket. Maybe they have a fidget Twizzler. This woman thinks and touches, and every time she looks in the mirror, she sees who she is. A tattoo can sometimes sum up a feeling or a part of your identity. Kathy Hochul's identity is being vaccinated. I think that is super creepy, and that is her today. That's not just her 2 years ago. That is her today.
Yeah, she had that. I think the speech that you're referencing was when she told people that, Jesus Christ gave us this vaccine. And if you love Jesus Christ, you need to protect your family members and get the vaccine. And, now we know it doesn't stop transmission. But that aside, it's a crazy thing to say and a crazy thing to invoke when you want people to get a medical treatment. And at the same time, everyone saw this happen in New York. It was actually covered by the mainstream media here. She tried to get, people, she tried to pass legislation where people who have coronavirus or any communicable disease would be put in, a COVID camp, would be put in isolation run by the state. And the Supreme Court of New York actually struck that down and said, this is illegal. You can't do this. This is illegal. And everyone saw that and said, OK, it's illegal. And you'd expect the governor to say, OK, I'll respect the law. But no, she immediately, she appealed this decision, and everyone saw this. So everyone saw that she wanted to lock people up illegally, and she's never been democratically elected. And now she's asking people to vote for her. And I think that's going to reflect very poorly on her at the polls. It's very interesting to me to observe a movement in New York City. And frankly, just a couple of weeks ago, the New York Supreme Court, not exactly, we're not talking about Texas here. We're not talking about red state here. We're talking about the New York Supreme Court issued the most stunning ruling that people who had been fired for not being vaxxed not only get their job back, they get back pay. And the ruling itself outlined that the whole moral and legal and logical basis for the vax mandate and vax passports was that you have to protect others because the vaccine stops transmission, and that has been proven to be not true.
And just, I find that incredible. And again, very underreported. I can assure you, if that Supreme Court had ruled the opposite way. So there's a whole counterculture in New York of people who I think would call themselves liberals, probably call themselves pro-choice. A lot of them are mums. A lot of them are in the public sector because that's where a lot of these vaccine mandates came, whether it was cops or firemen or paramedics or teachers. So it's very interesting how this abusive top-down vax madness turned people who I know would have voted Democrat before, I know it, turned them into skeptics. Sheila, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that she's doing this all over the place, old heretical Hochul. She's mobilized the Orthodox Jewish community against her. They've come out and endorsed Lee Zeldin. And one of the reasons they've done that is her inability or her lack of desire to do anything about anti-Semitic attacks that are happening quite openly on the streets of New York. And the Orthodox Jewish community is suing New York State, particularly the Jewish gun club in Rockland County. We've covered them before in the past. I know I have. I think you have too. That Governor Hochul's legislation that bans permit holders from carrying weapons into sensitive locations, including places of worship or religious observation. So that's even in a private home where you might be gathered for Bible study, prayer group, whatever. They're saying that this puts them at risk. And she passes this not even 3 years after the Muncie Hanukkah attack, where Orthodox Jews were stabbed praying over Hanukkah, and they would not have been allowed under Hochul's new law to carry a firearm to defend themselves. And so they've endorsed Lee Zeldin now.
I want to show you that speech just before I forget about it. I want to show you that speech where I didn't know she had this vaccination until she mentioned. I just want you to see this. And, there's something about Democrats. When they go to certain black events, they take on a black patois, which like a kind of accent. Like Alexandria, can you find the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez video of her doing that like a couple of weeks ago, Olivia and Efron? I just got it. Like Hillary Clinton did it so famously. Like she would go on black radio shows and say, "Oh, I got hot sauce in my purse." Well,
right.
Because I'm just like you. Like it's so condescending and so stereotypical.
There's that one speech that she did where she went into like full.
Oh yeah, full black pastor preacher accent mode.
Yes.
See if you can get the Hillary one, but I want to show you that Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez one because it's just incredible. It's just so incredible. It would be like someone saying, "You Jews, I like you. I'm just like you. I really like money. I like you. You know what? I'm like you Jews. I like money." And I sort of like sticking together with my kind. So I'm like you guys. Like that's how it feels to me. And it is so fake. And to watch this clearly secular, pro-choice, secular Democrat in I don't even know what religious environment it would have been. And to see now I refer to the Christian Bible often, and I'm not a Christian, and I sometimes get it wrong. But I'm looking for meaning, and I'm looking for understanding, and I'm not doing it to fool anybody to think that I'm a Christian. But
we know you're a Jew.
Yeah, that's right.
We know.
Watch Kathy Hochul say, "You Christians, I'm just like you." And let me just give you my interpretation of what Jesus would do, because you can just take a look. Just take a look.
I prayed a lot to God during this time. And you know what? God did answer our prayers. He made the smartest men and women, the scientists, the doctors, the researchers. He made them come up with a vaccine. That is from God to us. And we must say, "Thank you, God. Thank you." And I wear my vaccinated necklace all the time to say, "I'm vaccinated." All of you. Yes, I know you're vaccinated. You're the smart ones, but there's people out there who aren't listening to God and what God wants. You know this. You know who they are. I need you to be my apostles. I need you to go out and talk about it and say, we owe this to each other. We love each other. Jesus taught us to love one another. And how do you show that love? But to care about each other enough to say, please get vaccinated because I love you. I want you to live. I want our kids to be safe when they're in schools. I want you to be safe when you go to a doctor's office or to a hospital and are treated by somebody. You don't want to get the virus from them, you're already sick or you wouldn't be there. We have to solve this, my friends. I need every one of you. I need you to let them know that this is how we can fight this pandemic, come back to normal, and then start talking about the real issues that we have to. Fighting systemic racial injustice, which exists today. And if there's a denier, I will take you on any day because I've seen it. I know it exists.
All right, enough of that. I just wanted to show her religion. God wants you. I just want to let you guys know that I just came down. You see that hill back there? That's Mount Sinai. And I just climbed up Mount Sinai. And I had a little heart-to-heart with God himself. And my hair is now white. And there's a glow about me, and I'm carrying these 2 tablets. So only, not a lot of people talk to God. I just came down from Mount Sinai. I am a prophet, second only to Moses, and I suppose in the new book, Jesus. And I am here to say, God just told me that he wants you to take this Pfizer vaccine, and you're evil and stupid if you don't. So vote for me, okay, Christians?
The heretics are at it again.
It was a lot. And it's so funny, she will say she's anointed by, she has this relationship with Jesus Christ and get the vaccine. She wasn't even anointed by her constituents. She is, it's a really interesting thing. And just to go back to the, you said the court, undid the mandate, back pay, all these things publicly. Right after the court said, you need to reinstall all of these workers and give them money, Kathy Hochul and her office appealed that immediately. So these workers who it was widely reported in the mainstream media are getting their jobs back and getting back pay, they're actually still out of work. No one has gotten their jobs back. And you would think that maybe she would want to give some people their jobs back because the court said that they're legally obligated to before, people go to the polls. But that's not the case.
And I'm looking for the Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez accent video, and I'm sorry to...
AOC, a few days ago, she said, obviously, like we all say, we say, our Iran is how we pronounce the country. She said, my brothers and sisters in Iran.
Oh, no.
And she said, she said it like not an American. It was really funny. It was clearly she was obviously acting like a Middle Eastern person. I don't know. She's constantly taking on different characters.
They do it all the time. They do it all the time when they say Muslim instead of Muslim. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well, you know what? I appreciate her saying Paris instead of Paris because you know what? We'll have to leave that for another day. I can't quite find the video, but it's just it's very cringy. And I don't think Republicans do it. And I think the reason they don't do it is because they would instantly be torn up as a kind of vocal blackface, like it would like a kind of appropriation. I mean, sometimes when you talk to someone with a certain accent, you find yourself accidentally, using some of the, but it's just quite a thing. Listen, Jeremy, it's great to see you. Thanks very much. Time flies. I'm glad you're there in New York. There's important work to be done there. We have another American on deck. We're going to go across the country to the Los Angeles area. Our friend Joel Pollack, senior editor-at-large at Breitbart.com, who's standing by. So we'll say goodbye to you for now, Jeremy. Thanks very much for joining with those details from New York. As you know, Joel Pollack lives amongst the Democrats. He lives in L.A. County, I think, or at least Santa Monica, that is. And it's a very Democrat place, and he studies them. And he studies them with sort of the interest of a,
zoologist?
Say like a zoologist or an anthropologist, let's put it that way. And so I think because he lives amongst them and he focuses on them, it's fun to be a Republican like a conservative-oriented guy. You're
talking about him like he's Jane Goodall right now.
Yeah, well, but if you're a conservative person and you cover Democrats and you do so not in a gotcha way, but in a let me try and understand way. And that's the thing. I wish that there's so many journalists on the left that cover conservatives and right-wingers and Republicans in a gotcha way, in an attack-ish war room style way. One of the things I like most about Joel Pollack is that he's actually very fair-minded. And he genuinely wants to know what makes the other side tick. And we have him standing by in his home. It is 3 hours earlier out there, 5:18 p.m. Pacific time, so I don't think we have results from there yet. Let's go to Joel Pollack from Breitbart.com. Joel, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you see me okay over
I
there?
sure can. And my friend Sheila Gunn Reid is on with us, and I was just praising you. Don't mind me, because I like the style with which you approach the Democrats. You're not, I mean, it's tempting to mock and it's tempting to poke fun, but it's more useful to understand and to try and get in to understand their thinking and their ideologies and the Kremlinology behind things. Give us a little bit of what's really going on in the midterms here from the Democrat point of view. What are their goals? I mean, besides just stanching the red wave, what are the Democrats trying to achieve? How are they trying to position themselves? Are they thinking about 2024? Are there issues that they're making their central focus? Are they trying to shuck off their coronavirus policies? What does it mean to be a Democrat in the 2022 midterms?
Well, that's an excellent question that nobody in the American media has asked. It takes someone from outside the country and someone of your insight to ask the very basic question about what Democrats hoped to achieve in this election. If you listen to them carefully, you can see what they are trying to do. Essentially, the case they were making to their own voters for much of the year was that there are great things that they wish to do that Republicans are preventing them from doing in the Senate. And they need more Senate seats to be able to pass certain legislation and to be able to get rid of the filibuster threshold for passing legislation in the Senate in particular. We have 100 seats in the Senate. You need 60 seats to end debate on a question and move to a vote. If the other party can muster more than 40 votes against ending debate, they can filibuster and block a vote from taking place. The Democrats also tried to reassure their voters that they would hold on to the House of Representatives despite the fact that congressional districts were going to be redrawn. The Democrats put a great deal of effort into trying to gerrymander the districts in their favor. So they started this year with a clear set of goals, which was to pass more radical legislation than the current system would allow them to do. That's really the overall goal of the Democratic Party in this election. That was lost along the way for reasons that have to do with setbacks to the Democratic Party as well as victories for the Democratic Party, or at least motivations for the Democratic Party. The big setback was their plans to gerrymander some of the districts in the states they controlled failed when they were defeated by the federal courts. In New York and in Maryland in particular, Democratic state legislatures tried to redraw districts to write Republicans essentially out of the picture. And in New York and Maryland, the courts said no. So the Democrats could not do that, and Republicans gained a slight edge in the redistricting, which happens every 10 years after the census. Democrats then ran into trouble on inflation, which Joe Biden said was transitory and which Democrats pretended wasn't a real problem. He ran into trouble on gas prices. There was also a general crisis of confidence in his leadership hanging over from last year when the U.S. had a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Biden seemed more preoccupied with Ukraine and the Ukrainian border than the American southern border. People are very concerned about crime. And the Biden administration refused to do anything about crime in the cities. Now, that's not strictly speaking up to them, but the Democratic Party had backed these left-wing prosecutors in many major American urban areas who had presided over crime waves that were the result of a variety of factors, but largely the Black Lives Matter movement, which Biden and the Democrats supported, delegitimizing police, in some cases leading to police funding being cut. Defund the police was the slogan on the radical left. And Democrats often tried to show that they agreed with that. They would say redirect funding. That was the term Biden used. But they just would not stand up to George Soros, who was funding 75 of these prosecutors across the nation. And as crime became more and more of a problem, including for liberal voters in these Democrat-run cities, there began to be a sense that the Biden administration simply wasn't dealing with the realities of the average American voter. So all of that made it harder for Biden to get his message across, which is that Democrats needed 1 or 2 extra votes to end the filibuster and pass massive spending bills, to expand the Supreme Court, and then eventually to, as he puts it, to codify Roe versus Wade. That became an issue that was a benefit to Democrats when, over the summer, the Supreme Court struck down the Roe versus Wade precedent, which the Supreme Court decided guaranteed a right to abortion for Americans. That was decided in 1973. Essentially, at that time, the Supreme Court made it up. They tried to discover that right through a reading of the 14th Amendment and so forth. It's very complicated. But basically, they said there's a right to abortion, even though the Constitution doesn't provide for one. And that decision has been controversial for half a century. It was ultimately overturned in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center of Mississippi. So that decision came down, and then Democrats got very excited and said, you see, this is why we need to vote. We need to make sure that we vote out all of these Republican senators, make sure we get more Democratic senators who will confirm left-wing judges, who will restore Roe versus Wade, and we need to codify Roe versus Wade by getting rid of the filibuster. So that did seem to elevate enthusiasm among the core of the Democratic Party, but they ran into trouble with inflation sticking around, with gas prices rising again at the end of the summer, and also with the border, because the border crisis became very intense, and Governor Ron DeSantis and other Republican governors in the South eventually said, you know, we can't deal with this on our own. We're going to start sending these border crossers, these migrants, millions of them, north, so we can share the burden a little bit here, because these little border towns are being completely overwhelmed. Once these migrants arrived in liberal cities and liberal enclaves like Martha's Vineyard, the Democrats didn't know what to do with them. They just couldn't face the consequences of their own policies. That was a very important moment. And it showed that Democrats really just don't have any handle on governing in this country. Then I think the most important moment, and I'll finish with this, the most important moment came on September 1st, when Joe Biden gave a very chilling speech about how Republicans were a danger to democracy. And this built off the narrative Democrats had been pushing about January 6th. Democrats put a lot of effort into the January 6th committee, the various investigations. They basically tried to argue that Republicans are a danger to the republic because so many of them support Donald Trump, and Donald Trump tried to have the results sent back to the states and overturned or whatever, and they associated him with Capitol riot, which they call an insurrection, and so forth. And they spent a lot of time and energy on that, and Biden gave a speech basically saying that half the country was a threat to democracy, and a few days before he had called Republicans semi-fascist. I don't know how many Americans were convinced by that. Probably some Democrats already agreed with him, but to give a speech like that when the country was already suffering from economic crisis, when there was a crisis at the border, when the threat of nuclear war was growing in Europe, it just told voters that Biden's primary concern, remember, this was a major address in prime time at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, a big setup. It told voters that his primary concern was politics. It wasn't the economy. It wasn't crime. It wasn't homelessness. It wasn't border security. Joe Biden was concerned with politics. And at that point, Republicans started to enjoy a resurgence, and that has continued until now. And no matter how many different ways Democrats have tried to change the momentum of the race, they are in some ways hoisted by their own petard, because they were the ones who pushed for early voting in previous elections. Now that we've got early voting in many states, I think Republicans have actually turned out early. Republicans still tend to vote on election day, but Republican early voting numbers went up. And so there wasn't much that Biden and the Democrats could do to change the narrative once people decided they were willing to do anything to vote out this party. So the Democratic message has become completely lost and scrambled and garbled. They started out wanting more power to pursue left-wing programs. They were tripped up by the results of those programs, which led to high inflation, high crime, and border insecurity. And they just couldn't change course. Joe Biden is terrified of the left. Even in the closing days before the election, he was promising to end oil drilling and to shut down coal plants. That's a sop to the left. In 2008, by the way, he promised the opposite. When he was on the campaign trail for Obama, he promised to keep the coal plants open. So this was something that Democrats just simply had no answer for. And basically, they have no message except that Republicans are against democracy. And that's the message they took to a Democratic election. Judging by the results as they're coming in so far, a lot of Americans voted against democracy because people just didn't seem to care what the Democrats were saying.
I'm going to let Sheila ask you a question in 1 second, but first I just got to ask you, because I know you wrote a book about it 2 years ago called Neither Free Nor Fair, the 2020 U.S. presidential election. I remember talking to you about the book, and you said it wasn't so much cheated, like law breaking, but it's that the rules were changed in advance, and they were done through legislatures or through courts. So it wasn't so much like in the middle of the night stealing ballots, but in broad daylight, rigging the rules, changing the rules, relaxing the rules. I think that was your thesis, if I remember it. I'm really worried about that.
Several other things. There was the censorship on social media, which has now begun to unravel.
Right.
There was the violence in the streets.
Right.
In 40, 50 large U.S. cities, we saw riots, which were fomented by the left against authorities, but also against Donald Trump. That had a massive impact. And yeah, the changing of the rules, ostensibly because of the pandemic. Now, there was never any scientific evidence that going to a polling place was any more dangerous than going to the grocery store. But Democrats managed to convince judges who were terrified of sending people to their deaths at the ballot box. They convinced judges to change the voting rules. What happened, though, was Republicans managed, even though Trump lost the election, Republicans managed to win enough state legislatures that they were able to tighten voting rules that had been liberalized in 2020. So now Democrats are going to court again at this late hour to try to change the voting rules. In fact, in Pennsylvania, which is very closely contested, Democrats are in federal court trying to argue that ballots that arrive by mail should be counted even if they don't have a date on them. You can imagine the potential for fraud that involves, that you could just have anybody fill out a ballot and just claim that it was sent today. And then, so, they're still trying that same old trick, but I think there have been more defenses built up against it.
Sheila, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. I wanted to ask you, Joel, we're sort of seeing voters wake up in New York. They're seeing the crime, inflation, and Lee Zeldin has tightened up the race there. What, I guess, Ezra sort of described you as a anthropologist watching the Democrats around you. What is the problem with California? Because all these bad Democrat policies, they manifest themselves in the worst possible ways in California. Immigration, crime, Soros-backed prosecutors, climate policies, driving inflation, consistently the highest gas prices in the country month after month after month, and yet Democrats continue to win the day. I guess my question is there ever going to be a reckoning for these people in California?
Well, yes, there is going to be a reckoning. There may be a reckoning this year in Los Angeles. We have a very close race between Democratic Congresswoman Karen Bass, who's running for mayor, and billionaire developer Rick Caruso, who used to be a Republican but changed his party registration first to independent and then to Democrat. So you've got this all-Democrat contest for mayor. We have a funny system of primary elections in California where the top two vote receivers in the primary election advance to the general election regardless of party. So we have a lot of races in which Democrats are running against each other. But you have this reckoning that's happening because Karen Bass is the darling of the Democratic Party establishment, and she has offered nothing new in this election. It's just business as usual, the party machinery. Her campaign has consisted of meeting with all the various interest groups in Los Angeles, the ethnic groups, the unions, and showing the public that she has their support. Nobody cares. What people care about is crime. They care about homelessness. They care about inflation. They care about the cost of housing. That's what Rick Caruso is talking about. I actually went, in an anthropological sense, as Ezra says, I went to a Karen Bass rally, and she talked about abortion. Well, local government has nothing to do with abortion. She talked about climate change. There is nothing Los Angeles can do about climate change, except maybe put some more sand on the beaches if the sea level rises. But we're not going to have any impact on climate change, no matter how many Teslas people have in West Los Angeles. So she was talking about global issues, national issues, but not about the local issues. So there is a reckoning. Now, why can't Republicans win statewide in California? And look, they might do better this time. There are a couple of good Republican campaigns. Lanhee Chen is a young Asian-American Republican who is running a very, very good campaign for controller. That's sort of like the auditor of the state government. But it's very difficult because the Republican brand is toxic in California. Republicans are associated culturally, not, of course, in reality, but in a cultural sense by Hollywood and Silicon Valley with racism, with religious conservatism. And those are things that Californians obviously don't like. Nobody likes racism, but California also has a libertine social culture. People really like to live however they want. LGBT lifestyles are not just tolerated, but celebrated. And Republicans are cast as the opposite of all that. So it's the letter R after a candidate's name that basically dooms them. But voters in California really don't like what's happening. And none of the statewide leaders, indeed, not even Kamala Harris, who has now been elevated from senator to vice president, of course, none of them has any real depth of support. They have broad support because of the D after their name. But if there's a good Democrat who challenges one of them, then you have a horse race. And that's what we have here in Los Angeles. So we are very eager to see the results of this mayoral election, because if Rick Caruso can win, he really could at least begin to have an impact on the problems Los Angeles is facing, and he certainly will shake up the political establishment. It's interesting, just on this cultural note, Hollywood celebrities are split in this race. If you look at Breitbart.com at some of our entertainment coverage, you've got Katy Perry, Gwyneth Paltrow, some real A-list people in film and music who are supporting Rick Caruso and not Karen Bass. So the celebrities will take the opposite side of the Democratic Party establishment if the other candidate is also a Democrat, basically.
You know, I'm not sure that makes me like Caruso. If Hollywood likes him, that makes me apprehensive of him all of a sudden.
Well, keep in mind, someone like Gwyneth Paltrow, for example, let me say something very nice about her. And I should just also disclose that I have friends who are in business with her. So, that might affect my perception of her. But she is a businesswoman. She doesn't just rely on from the screen. She relies on sales of consumer products to customers. So she is actively engaged in the reality of the American consumer. And she understands what people are going through because it affects her bottom line as well. She's not just expecting to get cast in something and then show up on Oscar night and take home a golden trophy. I mean, she's really got a lot of substance as a business person, and she's really thinking about these issues. And many people in the business community in Los Angeles are terrified about what's happening to the city. So they are also lining up behind Caruso. Not everybody. There are other people who are supporting Karen Bass for various reasons. And look, I have to say this about Karen Bass. I don't think she has any new policy ideas, but she is a very nice person. And she was one of the only Democrats, despite her left-wing communist supporting background, who opposed the tearing down of statues. So she is at least able, if she does win, to say nice things, present a nice face for the city, I think. But I don't think she's going to change anything. I don't think anybody expects her to either.
You know, Ezra, you said Joel was fair, and look at him go.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why he's so credible. You know, sometimes when you go in with an ideological mindset, which I often do, the mind subconsciously rejects facts that do not accord with the theory. I mean, I try and keep an open mind, but I am generally repulsed by the woke hard left. And I just saw a CNN exit poll that said 73% of Americans are appalled by the direction. Let me get the exact wording. I don't want to get this wrong. 73% of voters are dissatisfied or angry about the way things are going tonight. 73% are dissatisfied or angry, whereas 5% are enthusiastic. This is CNN. In fact, it's Jeffrey Toobin. I'm always surprised they allow him back on TV. So, I mean, that's just such a stunning number. Very interesting. Joel, we'll let you go. We're grateful for your time. Great to see you again. Thanks for your sober-minded analysis, as always.
Thank you. And of course, the bigger question that will be raised tomorrow when we have the results in and see how big the Republican wave really was is, of course, around Donald Trump's political future. And right now, he looks like the only candidate that can take the nomination. Ron DeSantis was reelected today in Florida, and that's a very interesting result, too, because he won Miami-Dade County. And if you know Miami, it's very Democratic. It's 70% Hispanic. It voted for Hillary Clinton by 30 points in 2016, but Ron DeSantis has won, according to the latest results, by about 9 points in Miami-Dade. So that's a 40-point swing. So he's obviously shown some ability to win in formerly Democratic areas. It's just not clear that he has the national pull that Trump does. And of course, Trump is the one who endorsed DeSantis and elevated him to the governor's mansion. So it would be very awkward for DeSantis to challenge him. That wouldn't prevent him from doing so, but it would turn the Republican primary into something of a family feud, and I don't think that it would come out stronger for it. So it looks like Trump is the likely Republican nominee. There was a very important development over the weekend. Senator Tom Cotton, who's a very, very good senator and one of the few Republicans who doesn't owe anything at all to Donald Trump. He started his political career before Trump, and he was never appointed by Trump to anything. He was going to run for president, and he decided not to do it. And he's very young. He's my age. We actually went to college together. So he's got 20 years to consider running for president, maybe even more. But he has decided to bow out. So now all of the other alternative candidates are people who owe their careers in some way or another to Donald Trump. I don't think that is going to be an easy way into a challenge against Trump. So the Republican primary looks almost like it's ended before it's begun. We'll see. You know, it's all over bar the shouting, as they say. You know, there'll be a lot of shouting, and we will probably have debates and things like that. But Donald Trump right now has positioned himself as the party's likely presidential nominee in 2024, especially when you consider that a lot of the candidates who are going to win are people he endorsed, and often did so quite controversially. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out in Ohio and Pennsylvania and the rest. But very, very interesting questions about 2024 that we are going to ask in a day or two.
Give me 30 seconds on Georgia. What do you think is going to happen there?
It's hard to say. I think Herschel Walker looks like he has the edge, actually. He did exceptionally well in the debates. The media made fun of him because he sounds funny. He has a country accent, and our liberal elites consider that to mean that he is stupid. But he's not stupid. All of his answers were very good. He also was quite sharp in his attacks. They really pinpointed the weaknesses of the incumbent, who had nothing to say. And the problem for most of these Senate candidates, including the incumbent in Georgia, Raphael Warnock, is that they're all tied to Biden's policies. With the exception of Kyrsten Sinema, who's not up for re-election in Arizona, and Joe Manchin, who's also not up for re-election in West Virginia, nobody ever disagreed with Biden about anything. Those were the only two senators who ever put up a fight about anything. And so the rest of them are all stuck. So Raphael Warnock is stuck defending terrible policies. He wants to pack the Supreme Court. He wants to allow abortion until birth. All of these things are unpopular in Georgia, but they're all things that Biden has embraced. So that's really what has allowed Herschel Walker to pull ahead. He's also been very tenacious, and he's endured all sorts of personal attacks. They brought up past relationships, allegations that he asked girlfriends to get abortions and things like that. Not that that was illegal. It does conflict with his current stance on abortion, but I think Republican voters in Georgia just don't care about that at the moment. They just want to get the Democrats out of control, and Herschel Walker is a vehicle for that, and he's actually held up pretty well. So I think that he actually has an edge. He may even win outright. Of course, Georgia has a weird system where if you don't win 50%, then there's a runoff election. He may win without the runoff. We'll have to see what happens when the results come in.
Well, thanks
and
again.
Sorry to interrupt. It looks like Kemp is pulling ahead of Abrams by 3.5 points. So that means 4 years of election denial.
Abrams is going to take up her natural calling, which is as an MSNBC political analyst, but her political career is over.
Thank goodness.
Well, what a great night. Very interesting. Joel, thanks so much. We'll let you get back to things. Watching this a big night. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, there you have it. Joel Pollack, Senior Editor at Large of Breitbart.com. So interesting. I'm starting to take a peek at the different results from across America. There's so many great websites that have the updates. The NewYorkTimes.com actually is one of the most useful.
Fox is pretty interactive.
Fox is interactive. I'll take a little look.
You can sort of glide over. You can separate by Senate, House, and governor elections.
Right.
And they have it updated. It's very, very handy right now. So you can see how many are reporting. That's the one I've been looking at. All
right. Well, thank you for that advice. I'm on that page now. It is quite interesting. Well, it is 8:42 Eastern Time. And I propose that we take a very short break to stretch our legs, and we've got an ad. And folks, I want to tell you about something. For, of course, the last 2 years, like you, we have not been able to travel. We've not been able to gather. For more than a year, I was on Trudeau's no-fly list because I didn't get jabbed. But now we can see each other again. We can meet each other again and visit. And we're starting to do that. As you know, Rebel News has had some documentary films in Calgary and Edmonton. and we are announcing what we used to do in the before times. We called it Rebel News Live. And for those who like politics, it's sort of like the CPAC conference in Washington, D.C., where they invite all the interesting newsmakers and journalists, and everyone gets sort of like a 20-minute speech, and they just quickly put everyone through. So you see in the course of one day, you might see a dozen really interesting people. As you can see on the screen, look at some of our guests. I think that's me at the top there, and there's Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, Tamara Leach, your favorite rebels. In fact, if you go to rebelnewslive.com, you can see our list of invited guest speakers who are actually all confirmed. There's myself, there's Sheila Gunn Reid, there's Tamara Leach, there's Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, Dr. Julie Penessi of the Democracy Fund, Maxime Bernier of the People's Party, David the Menzoid, Menzies, Drea Humphrey, Andrew Lawton, our friend from True North, the Honorable Brian Peckford, the last surviving signer and negotiator of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Alan Honor, the head of litigation of the Democracy Fund, Derek Fildebrandt of the Western Standard, Dr. Roger Hodkinson, Ben Bankus, comedian, Palminder Singh, one of my favorite guys that I met during the trucking convoy, Robbie Picard, oil sands strong activist, great guy, Chad Williamson, part rock and roll, part lawyer, part cowboy. I want to tell you, Sheila, I was down in Lethbridge with him the other day, and we were at a barbecue for truckers, and there was barbecue burgers, barbecue hot dogs, and potato salad. Just a quick anecdote here. So we're putting our burgers together. We're putting our burgers together. Okay, you got your bun, you got your ketchup and relish, you got your patty. I'm waiting for him to put his burger bun on top. He does not. He does not. He takes a scoop of potato salad. Okay, that's going on the plate. No. That went straight on the burger. He took a scoop of potato salad, put it straight on the burger, put his bun on top, and he said, "That's how we roll."
He's thinking outside the bun.
I thought, I am 50 years old, and for 50 years, I did not know you could do that. I did not know you could put potato salad right on a burger. And he did, and I'll never look at the world or Chad the same way. Again, a new best practice, as they say. Thanks for letting me tell you that little Chad anecdote. On a more serious note, he is a lawyer for the truckers, including the 3 men down in Lethbridge, Alberta, peaceful protesters who have been charged. And Dr. Charles McVitie, of course, is the speaker. And there's another mystery speaker that we will announce closer to the day, a very exciting speaker, but I cannot tell you who it is until closer, but you're going to love it.
I don't even know, and I know everything that goes on.
We got to keep it a secret. We got to keep it on the triple down low. We got to keep it on the low down. Now I'm sounding like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez.
Hillary.
Hillary. Hey, here's a quick ad we have for the Rebel Live. Take a look.
Freedom in the year 2022, for me, folks, it means the return of Rebel Live. Now, Rebel Live is an annual event we used to put on before the man, or was it the COVID Karen, made us shut it down during the pandemic years. It is a freedom fun fest, if you will. All the freedom fighters you've grown to know and love over the years, they're going to be speaking at the Toronto and Calgary events. The Toronto event is on November 19th. That's a Saturday, and it will feature the likes of Dr. Julie Penessi, Arthur Pawlowski, Tamara Leach, and all your favorite rebels, including yours truly. I'll be the MC that day, Sheila Gunn Reid, and of course, the big boss man himself, Ezra Levant. Now Saturday, November the 26th, we're bringing Rebel Live to Calgary, and those aforementioned speakers will be there, and Sheila will be the MC for that event. You don't want to miss it. It's an all-day freedom fest. I know there are certain would-be conservative leaders that think freedom is overrated. You know, we don't think that way. I don't think you think that way. So if you want to get a ticket, please go to the website. They are going fast. Go to rebelnewslive.com. That's rebelnewslive.com. Get your orders in, and as Billy Red Lions used to say, folks, don't you dare miss it.
Don't you dare miss this one.
Freedom in 2022 is your right to disagree with me anytime on anything, in your heart, online, or in the public square. Freedom in 2022 is also your right to live your life however you see fit without hurting me or, for that matter, being bothered by me. But freedom in 2022 is in very real danger under constant attack by Justin Trudeau through his censorship bills, his attacks on gun rights, his attacks on farmers, and his attacks on peaceful protesters. These people have even tried to denormalize our flag. At Rebel News, we're not afraid to have dangerous discussions that Justin Trudeau, the media, and big tech censors say we're not allowed to have. And we want to have them with you at our upcoming Rebel Live events, first in Toronto, November 19th, and again in Calgary, Saturday, November 26th. I'll be there with dozens of other Rebels and Rebel-adjacent free thinkers, and I hope that you'll join us. Just go to rebelnewslive.com to get your tickets today, but do not sleep on this, because these tickets are going fast. See you soon.
Freedom in 2022 is a great threat in Canada. We've got provincial governments that have stripped away fundamental human and civil liberties in Canada. And we've got a federal government that is censoring and controlling the media and even cracking down on the right to protest in ways that are unprecedented in the post-war era. It's a fascinating but terrifying time if you're concerned about freedom, concerned about your basic liberties right now. But we've got to do more than just complain about it. That's why I've accepted the invitation to speak at the Rebel Live conference in Calgary, November 26th, coming right up here. I'm going to be speaking in particular about the state of the media. It's controlled by the federal government and what independent media can do to hold power to account, to stand up for our basic freedoms. I'm going to be there. I hope you'll come. You can buy your tickets at rebelnewslive.com, and I hope to see you there.
Three ads. If the first didn't convince you, and if the second didn't convince you, I'm sure the third convinced you. I like that first one with its sort of Star Wars 70s feel. I got a kick out of that.
Well, Menzies every time.
We've had some interesting conversations with our American friends, Yankee Pollock at Ron DeSantis HQ, Jeremy Lafredo in New York. Could they possibly have a Republican governor? And, of course, our super smart Democrat watcher, anthropologist, zoologist, Joe Pollock from Breitbart.com. But now we come back on this side of the border. One of my favorite guys to talk to because of his sweeping command of politics and law and history and logic and conservative principles is my dear friend Manny Montenegrino. He was a former senior partner at a national law firm. He was the lawyer for Stephen Harper as Prime Minister, and he is now the CEO of Think Sharp, and he joins us via Skype from our nation's capital, Ottawa, Canada. Manny, it's great to see you. My friend Sheila Gunn-Reid's here with me, and welcome to our election night, midterm election live stream. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Sheila. Glad to join you.
Well, I'm excited about what's going on. I was quite depressed in 2020 when not only the presidency was lost, but the Congress and the Senate, and it's been, and Americans have paid the price. I mean, the economy is a disaster. There are wars again that there weren't under Trump. Tell me your feelings. It's almost 9 p.m. Eastern, so the early results are in. Ron DeSantis handsomely reelected. I haven't really followed other races while I've been on here. How are you feeling about the night so far, Manny?
Well, I'm feeling very well. I think there's going to be order brought back to America. One of the key places to look is Miami-Dade. And I think probably most Canadians have been to Florida, or many Canadians at the East have been to Florida. Miami-Dade is a very democratic city. It's about 70% Hispanic, I think 10-15% Black, and the rest white. So it has been a Democratic stronghold for a long time. Even when the Republicans win the state, they lose Miami-Dade. Miami-Dade is very close now, and that tells you a lot of what's happening in this election. And I look at that county to tell me what's happening in the rest of America.
Yeah, it looks like Ron DeSantis at the governor level is ahead by about 10%, as opposed to behind by 20% last time. Manny, do you think that is the result of Ron DeSantis personally as governor? Do you think that's the Trump effect? Do you think that's radical woke Democrats driving Latinos away? Or do you think it's just people are sick of Biden? What do you think is going on there?
I think it's all of it. I think DeSantis is exceptionally brilliant in his command of simple messaging, and that has been working very well. I think there's a Trump effect. Trump has still enormous power with respect to attracting voters and logic to the whole process, and Biden is doing a terrible job. And you know, Democrats and liberals, they always look to paper everything through wordsmithing, and it's not working this time. And it's not working, and people are seeing the actual results of a catastrophic Democratic presidency and even Congress, and you can't simply change everything by words. People are, I mean, you can fudge it for a little bit, but when you see it play out, people are finally catching on. And I think Hispanics, you know, like you're looking at an Italian immigrant, and every Italian voted for liberals when we got to this country because we were threatened to, and it's simple as that. My father. But when you Italians, I mean, you look at the Hispanics, they fundamentally have strong conservative values. They work very hard. They believe in the family. They believe in the unity of the family, the greatness of the family. They believe in religion. They believe in hard work. These are all conservative values. And Hispanics, once they are liberated from the clutch of, you know, we let you into this country, and that was said to my father. And I have relatives that voted liberal, because they were told, we let you into this country, and if you don't, you're going back. And there's a sentiment of that with immigrants. But when immigrants start to see the value system, I mean, that's what elections are about. Which value system do you want? And the Hispanic, I have said this, and the Hispanics are going to move in droves to the Republican Party because they represent the values that they believe in. They don't believe in many of the values that I won't even call them Democrats or liberals, and now they're moving into socialists. They're escaping countries where they didn't have these rights. And so you're going to see that the Hispanic vote, and traditionally it's about 30% Republican, it might reach 50, even more this time. And that's true of the black vote as well. It's starting to move historically. So there's going to be when you analyze the whole data when it comes out, you're going to see a real awakening in America. And the Democrats have pushed so far to socialism that they're just a core. I mean, you have some great Democrats that are leaving the party. Bill Maher, who is probably the greatest spokesperson for the Democrats, has left this. The party doesn't represent this liberal thinker. So that's what's going to happen. Miami-Dade County tells me everything about this election. And now these are early numbers, but boy, oh boy, the Republicans are doing great.
Manny, let me read you a quick tweet from Mike Cernovich, who is an observer in L.A., who I think has contrarian takes sometimes, but I think he's often right. He said this about the results in Florida and DeSantis. He says, today's results show the way for Republicans to win Latino voters is not to give amnesty to illegal immigrants. This is an empirical fact now. Latino voters totally shifted. Amnesty is finished, done, is provably not the way. And when you think about it, Joe Biden has let in literally 2 million illegals in this year, like a shocking number. Yeah. It's so much more. It would be like the entire border of Roxham Roads. And you would think that, I mean, one might think that Latino voters would say, oh, they're largely Latino border crossers. The Democrats who opened the border are our friends. That does not appear to be what happened in Florida. And I know that there's a new wave of Republican Latinos in Texas. Myra Flores, an example. They're along the border, like some of these border counties, border districts, 60, 70, 80% Latino. They are voting MAGA Republican. And the open border is part of their motivation. It's counterintuitive if you think, oh, Latino voters just want more Latino immigration, illegal or not. I think that's an interesting observation by Mike Cernovich. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely excellent observation. Listen, it's very simple. Liberals see, Democrats, liberals see color. They don't see values. They don't see, they just categorize people into groups. I mean, again, I go back to when I was a young lawyer, a very senior liberal mover that was appointed to the bench by Pierre Trudeau. And I was just a kid. He looked at me and said, well, you're Italian, you must be liberal. There's this presumption by these liberals that they stereotype and put everybody in silos and not understanding their value system. I mean, if the liberals want to be smart, you don't let Latinos into the country because they're fundamentally conservatives and Republicans. I mean, go get, I don't know, North Koreans or Chinese or whatever, but not necessarily Latinos. Latinos are very conservative in nature. I mean, everything they do. But the Republicans see just silos. I mean, even Biden said that, which was horrific to hear. He said, blacks are monolithic. However, Latinos might be different. I mean, this is how they see them. They see them in categories, in groups. These are not value-based people. And once you sell values to people, they drive to values. It's that simple. And that's why you're seeing a huge shift, even in predominantly, I understand that white suburban women are moving to Republicans, and they were the ones that put the Democrats in place in the last election. Sell them values. People want values. They don't want just glitzy statements. They want real values, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it play out.
Sheila, go ahead.
No, I was just, it's funny because Manny used to be a lawyer for Stephen Harper, and Stephen Harper was very good at translating to new Canadians that they are indeed cultural conservatives, and Ron DeSantis has been great at that. But one of the things that Manny points out is so true, that even in Democrat cities in Texas, for example, the Democrat mayor of Eagle Pass, which is just, one of the main border crossings, she's come out against her own party because of the policies of the Democrats nationally, causing her town to be overrun, and she's on the front line dealing with it. And so people like her and her voters, I think they're just one nudge away from being told that they're Republicans because, as you say, they're translating on values and not necessarily the party itself.
I mean, the values of the Republican Party today are almost no different than the values of the Democratic Party in early 80s, mid 70s. I mean, if you look at John F. Kennedy and everything he said, and I was a young liberal back in law school, it's what the Republican Party or the Conservative Party says today. It's the left has moved so far. The left have done two things. They've moved far too left to socialism, which is a scary place to be for any country. And for those people that have escaped Cuba, escaped countries that had these totalitarian governments, they understand it. Kids that have not lived in it haven't understood it, but they've gone too far in that way, and they've also lost their work ethic. And here's what I mean by that. The Democrats, I saw a report that some, and the media is horrific because they're all in it together. It feels like a conspiracy of joint interests, but they were saying, well, the Democrats didn't message it right. And that's all they're concerned about is messaging. And change words, change the word recession to something else, and therefore we don't have a recession. And that's her answer. There's an open border, millions are coming through. Call them undocumented immigrants, and that problem goes away. So all they do is redefine everything. And you know what? After a while, you have to kind of do hard work and work hard at values that you can touch people. And that's what works. Not just redefine, not just getting rid of the problem by redefining it. If someone has a mental illness, you don't sit there and say, well, we'll choose whatever you want, and that cures it. No, you deal with the mental illness. And this is the problem, is wordsmithing is the only thing left for the woke liberal, is to change the language, and therefore you solve the problem. But the problem is still there. And Ezra, here's a great example. And I thought of it because I have to get this message out to as many people, but that's what the liberals do. They just redefine language, and therefore the problem goes away. And it's like if someone can't swim and he's near a lake and he's found himself in a lake, the liberals would say, well, let's just redefine that lake to be a park, and the problem goes away. No, the person drowns. And a conservative says, let's teach him to swim. I don't care what you call it, but let's teach him to swim so he can swim in that park or in that lake. But
Manny, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just seeing that Ron DeSantis is about to give his remarks from his campaign headquarters, and we have our reporter on the scene, Yankee Pollock. So I'm sorry to break away from you now, but I want to make sure we have this. It looks like he's about to take the stage. You're welcome to stay with us and watch these remarks. We can continue talking until he takes the stage. I just didn't want to miss it. And when he comes on stage, we'll take the audio. So we're looking at a feed from our friend Yankee Pollock, who looks like he's in like the 6th row, quite close to the front. That's Yankee for you. He's really enthusiastic. He's a real Floridian. You know, he used to live in Montreal, which had one of the roughest lockdowns in Canada, Manny. They had a curfew from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., yes. 10 p.m. at night to 5 a.m. And I think that's when our friend Yankee said, I'm out of here. And so he's a proud Floridian now.
God bless him.
So I just wanted to flip over because I didn't want to miss it. Hey, I got a quick question for you, Manny, while we're waiting for DeSantis to take the stage. I'm worried, like I was just looking at the race between Herschel Walker and Raphael Warnock in Georgia, and it is literally less than 0.1% difference. It is so close. And it's going back and forth. I am worried about election integrity, and I know you're not supposed to say that because you'll be banned on YouTube, but I think that the Democrats, especially in big cities where the local party is Democrat and they control things, I'm worried that the Republicans don't just have to win, they have to win by a significant margin that can't be overturned by cheating. What do you think?
No, we've just gone through, and I don't know why people don't understand. We have gone through the greatest misinformation that has gone to the core of human lives, and that is the COVID and the COVID vaccines. We were told right from the beginning that these vaccines are going to prevent infection, prevent transmission, and get us to herd immunity. And people are still saying it today. You need to have critical thinkers. At the beginning of this, I questioned the vaccine.
Manny, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Manning. I'm sorry, but Ron DeSantis has taken the stage, so we're going to see if we can get an audio feed from Ron DeSantis. I'm sorry to interrupt you mid-sentence,
no
Manny. Do we have audio from Florida? There we go. Thanks, Manny.
Over these past 4 years, we've seen major challenges for the people of our state, for the citizens of the United States, and above all, for the cause of freedom. We saw freedom in our very way of life in so many other jurisdictions in this country wither on the vine. Florida held the line. We chose facts over fear. We chose education over indoctrination. We chose law and order over rioting and disorder. Florida was a refuge of sanity when the world went mad. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world. We faced attacks. We took the hits. We weathered the storms, but we stood our ground. We did not back down. We had the conviction to guide us, and we had the courage to lead. We made promises. We made promises to the people of Florida, and we have delivered on those promises. And so today, after 4 years, the people have delivered their verdict. Freedom is here to stay. Of the people of Florida, we not only won election, we have rewritten the political map. Thank you for honoring us with a win for the ages. I want to thank all of our campaign staff, from campaign manager Janera Peck down. This was the best run campaign in the history of Florida politics. I want to thank all of our wonderful volunteers who worked so hard to get out the vote. Your support means the world to Casey and I. God bless you and thank you. Now, it's a lot easier to run a good campaign when you got a great record to run on. And I would not have been able to see the level of accomplishments that we saw unless I had outstanding personnel working in the executive office of the governor, as well as heading state agencies. These folks worked hard to implement our agenda. They believed in our agenda, and the results have been historic. Thank you for your support. Thank you to Miami-Dade County. It's clearly apparent that this election, we will have garnered a significant number of votes from people who may not have voted for me 4 years ago. And I just want to let you know, I am honored to have earned your trust and your support. And most important of all, thank you to the greatest First Lady in all 50 states. Support, being a tremendous mother to our 3 young children, and serving as an example for women throughout this state, especially going through the battle of cancer. She is remarkable. Of the 2022 fall elections, but in reality, Americans have been voting for many years now. They've been voting with their feet, and the results of that behavior has been just as stark as our landslide victory today. States and cities governed by leftist politicians have seen crime skyrocket. They've seen their taxpayers abused. They've seen medical authoritarianism imposed, and they've seen American principles discarded. The woke agenda has caused millions of Americans to leave these jurisdictions for greener pastures. Now, this great exodus of Americans, for those folks, Florida, for so many of them, has served as the promised land. We have embraced freedom. We have maintained law and order. We have protected the rights of parents. We have respected our taxpayers, and we reject woke ideology. We fight the woke in the legislature. We fight the woke in the schools. We fight the woke in the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke lives. People have come here because our policies work. Leadership matters. We refuse to use polls and put our finger in the wind. Leaders don't follow, they lead. We set out a vision, we executed on that vision, and we produced historic results. And the people of this state have responded in record fashion. Now, while our country flounders due to failed leadership in Washington, Florida is on the right track. I believe the survival of the American experiment requires a revival of true American principles. Florida has proved that it can be done. We offer a ray of hope that better days still lie ahead. I am proud of our achievements in this state. I am honored by your support, and I look forward to the road ahead. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race in this first term, and I have kept the faith. We've accomplished more than anybody thought possible 4 years ago, but we've got so much more to do, and I have only begun to fight. God bless you. Thank you for a historic landslide victory.
Ron DeSantis, a hearty win, not even close, in Florida, returning as the governor there. Not even close, in fact, flipping the largely Latino county of Miami-Dade, a county that was hugely Democrat a couple of election cycles ago. Now it is not, at least when it comes to the state level. Sheila, let me get a quick word from you on Ron DeSantis, and then we'll bring in our friend Marie Oakes.
Sure. He won by 19 points, according to Fox News. So close from last time. And I guess the moral of the story is he only won by a few thousand votes last time, but he put it into high gear. Mm-hmm. He rammed through the Ron DeSantis agenda. There was no hidden conservative agenda there. He did what he said he was going to do because he had 4 years to do it and he had to act fast. And you know what? He gave himself enough runway for voters to realize it wasn't some sort of catastrophe. Let that be a lesson for Danielle Smith here in Alberta. Let that be a lesson for Pierre Poilievre if he ever makes it to the prime minister's seat. Just act fast and do what you say you're going to do, because that's exactly what Ron DeSantis is. And he took a state where elections sometimes end up in courts before they're all sorted out to a 19-point spread between him and Charlie Crist.
Yeah. I mean, with 86% of the votes cast, let me just tell you the raw numbers, 2.9 million for Charlie Crist and 4.3 million for Ron DeSantis. That is well beyond the margin of lawyer, well beyond the margin of cheating. Joining us now via Skype is Marie Oakes, one of my favorite people. She's with the Westphalian Times, and she's a TikToker for freedom. Marie, great to see you again. How you doing?
How are you doing tonight? I mean, that speech by Ron DeSantis was fantastic.
Yeah, tell me what you thought about it. What stuck out in your mind?
I would say really like how he did COVID and how he dealt with COVID. That was throughout that speech. He really said, like, we did this in Florida. We did things differently. We didn't have these lockdowns. And I do really think that we are seeing this voter share we're having because of how well he did do COVID compared to other states. People fled all over the United States and Canada to Florida.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the success of an unabashed, unashamed, media-resistant, take the offensive, but don't go crazy. Like, he's not full Trump. He's sort of the 80% as much as Trump, but that means he gets in trouble far less, because it's that last 5% that gets Trump in trouble. So you have he's very firm and vigorous with the media. He's got a great press team, Christina Pushaw. Just they're very proactive, but mainly he just didn't blink. And I remember when he said, we're not doing the lockdowns, we're keeping the schools open. And for about 2 weeks, the media was, we can bully this guy. And he didn't bend, and the world didn't end. And I think that set the tone. I think it gave courage to other governors. It gave courage to other jurisdictions, even up here in Canada. I remember Jason Kenney in 2020 bragging to me, very, very ironic considering what happened later, that he was considered the Ron DeSantis of Canada. Like if Ron DeSantis was your yardstick, not just in Florida, but around America, but also around the world, I think Ron DeSantis helped free North America over the last 2 years, not just Florida. His example, and I hope his example, as Sheila says, inspires other conservative leaders. Now, tell us where you are. I think you're in the state of Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. That is as deep blue as it gets, doesn't it?
I mean, the thing is, people think Illinois is a blue state. It's not. We are overrun by the city of Chicago, specifically Cook County. We are a red state. You leave Chicago, you see like redneck type of folks, you see working class people. Where I live, everyone has Republican signs. In my whole time here, even when I drive through Chicago, I saw 2 J.B. Pritzker for governor signs, and he's already been the governor, but he doesn't have that much support. But because he has D by his name, people in Cook County will vote for him.
Yeah, that's how it is. Eh? Are there other districts or states or, whether it's at the state level for governor or the Senate, are there other races you're watching? What are some bellwethers that will tell us what kind of a night this is? I mean, I think everyone expected DeSantis to win. I'm really nervous about Georgia, the Georgia Senate. It is so close. I'm having, it makes me anxious to check it right now. Warnock is at 41%, and Herschel Walker, the Republican, is trailing. I don't know if he's going to. I don't think the Republicans are going to flip that seat in Georgia, which makes me deeply sad. Or who knows? Maybe the liberal urban centers are the ones that are voting first. I just don't know the state well enough. I was hoping for Republican turnover there, and I'm very bullish on Arizona, where you've got Blake Masters running for Senate. He's sort of a Peter Thiel Trump Republican. And on the governor's side, of course, you have the amazing Carrie Lake, who's just a star on social media. Whether or not she's got the horsepower on the ground, we don't know. That's what I'm keeping an eye on. What are you interested in, Marie?
There's a few different ones. Those ones you listed, those are kind of the big ones. But there is this district in Indiana, District 1. It has Gary, Indiana, which is next to Chicago, but then the whole district overall. This has been a Democrat state, but the polling has been consistently showing like it's squeezing with the Republican candidate. And right now it's 43 to 56. So Democrats leading 56%. That's still very close with only 75,000 votes in. So, and this is like where Indianapolis is. So I'm really curious about this place. And then of course the Michigan race. New Hampshire is kind of an interesting one. I don't think it'll pull through right now. It's not looking too hot, but we're really early. So it's always hard to say when we're so early. People are scared about Pennsylvania. People, like you are scared about Georgia, but we're so early where it's like, it's probably about 2 more hours. So we really get an idea of where things are at right now. Right now, Florida seems to be more red than Texas. And everyone thinks of Texas as this big Republican red place, but maybe Florida's the new Texas in the U.S.
Yeah, I think it is for sure. Sheila, what's on your mind?
I was looking at, as Ezra and Marie both pointed out, Governor DeSantis probably did free the free world from COVID lockdowns, because when you look at the states that followed his lead, because he took the slings and arrows right away when he said, we're done with this stuff. Texas, Beto O'Rourke, the Democrats are not bringing their best there, but he's doing I think more poorly than people thought he would. And then if you take a look at South Dakota, and I know it's very early in South Dakota, but Kristi Noem there, she only won with a 3-point spread against the Democrat challenger in 2018. And she's absolutely leveling the Democrat challenger this time. She's out fundraised like the highest amount of fundraising dollars in South Dakota ever. And she's basically created a Democrat Party there that doesn't exist. There are more registered independents now there than Democrats. And I think that's not necessarily her. I think that's the DeSantis effect.
I would say there's also one more race that people should be looking at. It's not one that's really on people's radar because it's more of local, but the LA mayor race. You have
Yes, we talked about that with Joel Pollak. Yeah.
Okay, because you see like people like Katy Perry, they, posting pictures of themselves voting for this guy. And, used to be a Republican, but he went independent when Trump went into, became president. But you're seeing so many celebrities kind of showing how upset they are with what's going on in LA. And LA is like actually awful. Like, I don't think, Canadians realize how bad LA is. You see it in the movies and you think it's all glitz and glams. Like, no, if you go to downtown LA, it is homeless people. It's not really like a normal city like New York or Chicago or one of these other like Toronto. But it's different. So that's an interesting one where, these Democrats, they do, start to see things are happening that they might not really like, and maybe they're noticing that their policies were not working too well, and maybe they're open to change.
I'm just nervous about the fact that, it's not who casts the vote, it's who counts the vote. And you got to be careful when you talk about that on a live stream, because YouTube, it's funny because in the last couple of days, the mainstream media has been awash with stories of, it's perfectly normal to have voting take days or even weeks to count. Like, you have this entire narrative about don't trust the red wave. It's not that bad. It's almost like the Democrat media this time is saying, we don't believe the results. They're going to try and steal it. So that's kosher. It really depends on which side you're in. I mean, for example, Stacey Abrams in Georgia has 100 times declared herself to be the rightful, queen of the throne, and she was deposed, and the usurper sits on the throne. I mean, it's quite something that, Carrie Lake, the gubernatorial candidate in Arizona, was brilliant about this when she was, I don't know if, Efron, if you have that video handy, Carrie Lake was asked about being an election denier. And she was ready for that question. Let me know if you can find that clip on Twitter. It's pretty easy to find, actually. Just, some poor reporter says, I'm going to ask the usual dopey media party question to Carrie Lake. And he thought he would get the normal, I'm so sorry answer. But the way she swats back, I see that Efron's got that. Let me just play a clip of this, Marie. You'll get a real kick out of it. Here, I hope she wins so badly. I mean, she's a star on Twitter. I don't know if that translates to support on the ground. But here, maybe you've seen this before. I thought this was wonderful. Take a look.
I don't know what the problems are going to be. But I know that people are feeling disenfranchised today. I saw a woman walk away from a line today. Guys, I'm asking you in the media, do you think this is normal? You're young. You didn't vote back in the day when I started voting, where you walked up, cast your ballot, they counted it right there in the small precinct, and you knew the results the night of the election. We can't keep having elections run this way. We're going to have Hillary Clinton losing her mind when she's another election denier. She's already predicting bad elections in 2024. We've got to get this fixed. I want my children who voted for the first time today, I want them to have a country, and we need to have honest elections and transparent elections. Now, I hope that we get all these problems solved. I hope they get solved. Did you already ask a question? I don't know what
That's not actually the clip I had in mind, but that was a good one nonetheless. She had one where she just had a stack of quotes of Democrats being election deniers. Don't worry about it, Efron. That was a good clip nonetheless. I don't know. I mean, there's a crop of brash, tough Republicans, and I know, and it's a weird thing because a lot of Democrat super PACs, I know this sounds crazy to Canadians because this would be such skullduggery in this country, but Democrat donors were boosting Trumpy Republicans in the primaries. They were literally
They did
donating.
it in my state too.
Yeah, they were.
JB Pritzker donated like more than $20 million of his own money to his rival, and then they scream, "Oh, these people are so crazy and they're so radical." It's like, hey, they won their primary because of you.
It's so weird. Like, and because they thought, okay, we want the craziest Republican in their mind, the Trumpiest Republican, because A, they won't be palatable to the voter, and B, it'll motivate the Democratic base. Maybe, but that's sort of a risky strategy, because what happens if they actually win? I mean, I remember the media party in 2015 when Trump first declared. They said, "Oh, what a laugh. He's such a joke. I'm for Trump because it'll be such a disaster for the Republicans. Plus, he's hilarious." And they all thought it was really, really funny until he won. And they're playing that same playbook again. And you have, like, Blake Masters is Trumpier than Trump in some ways. Yeah. I really want to see how he does in Arizona. Like, just a strong America First message, and just the anti-woke candidate, that whole Arizona crew. It'll be a real test if they win. I don't think polls close there for another half hour, but that'll be amazing to see.
And like, going back to what you were saying, like, about election security problems, like, it's different in every state, but I don't think Canadians even realize, when I went to vote today, all I was asked is, "What is your last name?" And then they're like, "This is your first name?" I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "This is your address?" I'm like, "Yes." And then they just printed out a little receipt, had me sign it, and then I got my ballot and I voted and I put it in the scanner and I left. But who's to say, if you know someone's first and last name and you know their address, what could stop you from voting for them? Because she didn't have a computer. It was like just like a piece of paper with all the people in my area, because I'm a smaller precinct. There was no voter ID check. There's none of that going on like it does in Canada. And I'm just shocked every time I vote here, being like, this is so weird.
Yeah, that really is weird. That's terrifying. I mean, you went in there in good faith and no shenanigans, but I can only imagine. So they literally didn't ask you for any card or any ID of any sort?
You don't need it. You just need to be registered to vote. And if you're registered to vote, you just go where you're supposed to go. Like, because like you have them in for your specific area. You go there, you're on a list. They check you off that you've done it. You sign a little thing saying like, "Yep, this is me." And then you go and get your ballot.
That's unbelievable.
Wow.
Well, Marie, it's great to see you again, and thanks for giving us a dispatch from the deep blue state of Illinois. But I take your point that it's just Cook County and the rest of the state. I mean, and that's how it is in so many of these states. If you look at the map of the of just the land by land mass, it's by counties that vote Republican. The whole country looks red with a few little blue dots. But that's because there's sparse rural places that are large, and you've got these intense deep blue cities that are like pinpricks. But the size of they may be small geographically, but they're so demographically powerful. I think that's one of the reasons why the idea of an electoral college and giving each state 2 seats in the Senate, there's some brilliance there from the Founding Fathers to protect the smaller interests. I know that the left hates that, but thank God for it. Anyways, it's been great to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll keep watching you on TikTok and on your Instagram Reels, and keep up the fight at the Westphalian Times.
Thank you for having me on. Have a good night.
Right on. That's Marie Oakes. Well, Sheila, great to spend the evening with you. We're 2 hours into it, and I have to say the race that I was really the most hopeful for was the Senate election in Georgia, because I felt pained when it was a double loss, when both seats were open last time and both went to the Democrats, taking the Senate away from the Republicans. I'm not an American. I don't have skin in the game there, but as any Canadian, I have skin in the game, because as America goes, so goes the world. And Raphael Warnock is on the ballot against Herschel Walker, 2 African-American candidates, and 60% of the vote is in, and the Democrat leads by 2 points. But that's a pretty big lead when 60 points are already in. Now, I say again, I don't know what districts or counties are reporting. It could be that Atlanta, which I imagine is the big Democrat dot, maybe they count the big city first, and maybe when the rural result comes in, you'll have more votes for Walker. But boy, that one is an important, sentimentally an important one to me.
Yeah. There's another big election happening tonight that I'm sort of keeping a look on out of the corner of my eye, and that's Brooks Medicine Hat here in Alberta. It's Danielle Smith's by-election. We'll find out if she's won her seat.
Really? I didn't know
Which
that was
she will.
tonight. And that's happening tonight.
Right now. Polls close at 8 my time. And we'll find out, I think, pretty quickly that she's won pretty handedly, which will give her a seat in the legislature, and she can get right down to business DeSantis style, I hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, Brooks is a pretty conservative place. I totally forgot about that. I did not even know that. So thank you for the heads up about that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, keep me posted. Back to the United States of the USA. Efron, should we take another quick commercial break? All right, folks. Just in case you're wondering, I would love it for you to attend Rebel News Live. I will be there at both Calgary and Toronto. Sheila Gunn Reid will be there. Tamara Leach will be there. Well, here's a reminder of who will be there. I'm looking at their smiling faces. Take a look. Here's the ad.
Freedom in 2022 is not sitting idly by while health diktats with no skin in the game make up all the rules. If you're like me and want to play an active role in upholding civil liberties and freedoms for all Canadians, for our children, and eventually our grandchildren, then come out to our Rebel Live event and get to know us in person. We'll hearing from some of the most influential leaders in the freedom movement. We have events in Toronto on November the 19th and in Calgary on Saturday, November 26th. Tickets are on sale now at rebelnewslive.com. Come out, have lunch, get some Rebel swag, meet the Rebels, and more. You don't want to miss this event. Check it out, rebelnewslive.com.
Freedom in 2022 is certainly about being able to make free choices for ourselves and for our family, who we believe are the best. We have seen so much suffering over the last 2 years. People who die alone in terrible conditions, people losing dream jobs, polarized families, and a society that insult and yell at each other for making a different medical choice. But people have risen, and it will be through them that the future will have an important meaning for all of you, but especially for the next generation. Rebel News has been present at every step of this great challenge, but so many other pioneers whom you could meet and hear at our great conference about freedom for our beautiful country, which is Canada. This conference, which will be held in Calgary and Toronto, will show you the faces of the influence of freedom that you have seen over the past 2 years. You don't want to miss this, so get your ticket now at rebelnewslive.com, and it will be a pleasure to see you there and meet you in large numbers. It's time to drop these masks and let the truth shine.
Hey folks, from October 13th to November 25th, we are here in Ottawa for the Emergencies Act inquiry organized by the Public Order Emergency Commission. But why the Emergencies Act inquiry? Well, Because during the Freedom Convoy back in February, Justin Trudeau used a never invoked before Emergencies Act to basically seize protesters' bank accounts, seize protesters' money, seize their assets, trample their civil liberties. So we're here this month, for the next month and a half, to figure out if the way the government acted was lawful and was appropriate. So we are here to hold the government accountable, but we need your help. We are here to cover it for you because everyone else here is mainstream media. So if you want to help us cover it, if you want to help us bring you the other side of the story, factual, actual news, go to truckercommission.com and consider making it.
Freedom in 2022 is your right to disagree with me anytime on anything, in your heart, online, or in the public square. Freedom in 2022 is also your right to live your life however you see fit without hurting me or, for that matter, being bothered by me. But freedom in 2022 is in very real danger under constant attack by Justin Trudeau through his censorship bills, his attacks on gun rights, his attacks on farmers, and his attacks on peaceful protesters. These people have even tried to denormalize our flag. At Rebel News, we're not afraid to have dangerous discussions that Justin Trudeau, the media, and big tech censors say we're not allowed to have. And we want to have them with you at our upcoming Rebel Live events, first in Toronto, November 19th, and again in Calgary, Saturday, November 26th. I'll be there with dozens of other Rebels and Rebel-adjacent free thinkers, and I hope that you'll join us. Just go to rebelnewslive.com to get your tickets today, but do not sleep on this, because these tickets are going fast. See you soon.
That's such an amazing lineup. I'm really excited. I mean, I happen to know all of those people, so I have a fondness and an affection for them. But the idea of having each of them give a speech back to back, and then the keynote speeches, I think the keynotes are by Arthur Pawlowski and Tamara Lich, who, not coincidentally, were really political prisoners. Now, Sheila, you went all the way to Geneva, Switzerland, with our lawyer, and I wonder if we can call up this video, Efron. The way that Justin Trudeau and his regime, I'm using the word regime because when you invoke martial law, I get to call you a regime, not just a government. The way they are treating peaceful political protesters like Tamara Lich and Arthur Pawlowski is the kind of thing that you would more expect to see from an authoritarian regime, not from a liberal democracy. That you would see it in a unfree or a partly free government, not from a free country like Canada. So we had an excellent human rights lawyer, Sarah Miller, who also happens to be the lawyer for Arthur Pawlowski. Accompany Sheila Gunn-Reid to Geneva because that is the headquarters of the UN Human Rights Council. And I read the document. You can find it on our website. A formal legal complaint to the UN to have them investigate Canada for its treatment of political prisoners as they investigate other human rights abusers. Here, take a look. Here's the video. Oh, we're just a second away.
Sign there. Let's arrow that way. We're here to drop off some documents at the Wilson House.
Yep. So what is called?
It's a UN Human Rights Complaint. We're just wanting to drop off some documents for a human rights complaint.
Sheila Gunn-Reid for Rebel News, and I'm here in Geneva, Switzerland, in front of the UN building. And I'm here with Sarah Miller, one of Canada's best human rights lawyers, and we are here to hand deliver her meticulously drafted human rights complaint documenting the human rights abuses that unfolded in Canada over the last 2 years under the auspices of the pandemic. Now, Sarah, give us a little bit of information about what's in the complaint. I saw the complaint today. I'm overwhelmed with the amount of evidence you put into it. It's a 3-inch binder full.
Yeah, so what we have is the complaint itself, which gives numerous examples of different human rights violations under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Articles 3, 9, 18, 19, and 20. We lay out all of those examples, Artur Pawlowski, the other pastors, Tamara Leach, all of the people who have been targeted specifically, not necessarily because of the pandemic, but because they are expressing a viewpoint contrary to their government or trying to practice a religion contrary to the interests of the government. Then we go into all the evidence that we've provided, which is, there's been ample case law created all around this legislation, articles on news reports to show how Canada has responded.
That is an excerpt from Sheila's trip to the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, going with our lawyer, Sarah Miller, to file a formal complaint against the treatment of Artur Pawlowski, Tamara Leach, and other political prisoners, and they are absolutely political prisoners. When you put someone in prison, pre-trial detention of more than a month and a half, without a hearing, for a peaceful offense, that is how you treat a political prisoner in a place like Iran or China. That is not the Canadian way. Sheila, great to see you again. So you're wearing your American Pride shirt.
Yes. The eagle.
Eagle. There you go, with your Canadian style puppy. It's a nice combination. It's good to see. The results are still trickling in. Now, they haven't started for the places in the West that I'm interested in, like Arizona. I am despondent about Georgia, which I had allowed myself to hope would go Republican, but it is not over. It is not over. It's 72% of the votes are counted, and the Democrat leads by 1%. So I suppose I should keep my knickers. I shouldn't get my knickers in a twist, because hopefully it is more rural and conservative places that have yet to be counted. So I shouldn't get too nervous. What's interesting is that the third candidate there, who I think is a libertarian, is sopping up 2% of the vote. That'll be interesting if that is more than the margin of victory. Arizona is another election I'm very curious about. And one thing that I thought would be a little bit different is the New York governor's election. Now, maybe that was just too much to dream. But right now, the incumbent, Kathy Hochul, Democrat who has the vaccinated necklace on, she is leading by more than 2-1, 67.6%. But Sheila, we've talked about domestic policy, and we've talked about inflation, and we've talked about wokeism and Biden's cognitive health and things like that. But one thing we haven't talked about is foreign affairs. And I think most Americans in this election are not thinking about foreign affairs. They're thinking about the price of gas and inflation. But I think a number are worried about the gathering clouds of war, whether it's Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the fact that the West seems to be in a game of brinksmanship there, or China's adventurism and saber-rattling with Taiwan. And if there's someone who we can trust to give us the straight goods, who's a real expert, especially on China, it's our friend Gordon G. Chang. And I follow him on Twitter at that Twitter handle, Gordon G. Chang, and I encourage you to do so. And he is standing by now to give us his thoughts on things. Gordon, great to see you again. Welcome back. You're on with my friend Sheila Gunn-Reid and I. I think it's fair to say that foreign relations are not the top concern of this election. They rarely are, but this really is a domestic and economic election. But out of the corner of their eye, I think Americans are paying attention to Ukraine and the war and the saber-rattling and the fact that we're in a proxy battle against a nuclear army over there.
We certainly are, Ezra. But there's one foreign issue that does affect Americans, and it does affect their vote, and that is Mexico. That is the southern border. Remember, China is there. We know it because there's record amounts of fentanyl coming across. That is fentanyl that is manufactured in China. The ingredients are sent to the two cartels on the Mexican border. They mix them and they send them across. So that's one issue, because that was 77,000 Americans last year who were killed by illegal fentanyl. And these fentanyl gangs are supported by the Communist Party because they could not operate without the blessing of the party in the party's near total surveillance state. So we have a situation where it does affect our votes, especially in places like Arizona. But as you point out, things like Ukraine, things like Taiwan, they're on the back burner. But these are issues which could go to the front of the burner very, very fast, especially considering some of the crazy talk we heard from Xi Jinping today. The guy sounds unhinged. He's got his finger on the button, and he's got unprecedented political power in China. So this is a really dangerous situation.
Well, let's take a minute on that because I haven't been following that closely, and I know you were a very avid follower. I know Xi Jinping, there were questions, is he really in control? He had the party conclave, I forget the name of it. So it's not democratic by any stretch, but he does have to play political games with other rivals. How did that go? I see the headline in the Daily Mail today, China will focus on preparing for war, Xi Jinping declares. So it sounds like maybe he got through his leadership rivalry by becoming more bellicose. Is that right?
Well, yes. What was really striking about today was that he said that the external situation for China is unstable and uncertain. Well, it certainly isn't. Nobody's threatening China. What is unstable and uncertain is the internal situation in the country. Because of the COVID lockdowns, people are seething. We saw the open defiance of the party in Zhengzhou, which is in the central part of China. That's where more than half the world's iPhones are made at one plant, Foxconn, a Taiwan-owned plant. We saw last weekend, people just streamed from the plant, escaping, climbing over fences. And what was interesting, Ezra, is that it was not just the people leaving, it was people in the surrounding areas helping them. So you had truckers, dump trucks, flatbed trucks, pickup trucks, tankers were taking people away from the plant. And that was at great risk to the truckers themselves because they could have been imprisoned for all of this. So I think Xi Jinping was not referring to the external situation, because if he did, he was really unhinged and we'd really have to worry. But I think that he is looking at the internal situation, seeing how bad it is, and becoming bellicose as a way of trying to distract the Chinese people from mistakes, from policies which he is clearly responsible for, which are clearly responsible for domestic debacles, and for which he has no answers to solve.
Wow, that's incredible. You know, when the lockdowns first began in the West, I remember seeing some videos coming from China, some of which I now realize were probably doctored or misinformation. I remember that famous one of someone just literally collapsing on the street, and that was COVID. And a lot of these were generated in China, and I think I probably was taken in by some of them. And part of me thought, this is China's way to scare the West into locking ourselves down while they move on. And I remember, by New Year's Eve, flipping from 2020 to 2021, I know Wuhan was back to normal. They had fireworks, and the West was really getting locked down. And I thought, they just scared us into locking ourselves down. But it seems a little different now. I see images out of China, and maybe, again, I'm getting doctored video, that China is actually going ahead with its zero COVID, and they're going ahead more strictly than ever. So maybe it was to hurt the West, but they're actually enslaving themselves. Like, I think that, I don't know why, but I think parts of China, and it looks like it's sporadic, are locking down harder than ever. Am I wrong on that? It's hard to know what's really going on there, but I think they've gone nuts on COVID, even though it's almost 2023.
Yeah, they've gone insane on COVID. And the reason is that Xi Jinping is using the COVID rules to control the Chinese people. He is known as the author of the zero COVID policy, which is to do everything possible to prevent any transmission of the disease. And what it's done, even if it's been successful in reducing COVID, it's caused so many other problems because people can't go to hospitals. We see COVID jumping all around the country. Right now it's in Guangzhou, which is a really important domestic center for manufacturing. And this is a really bad story because it's disrupting the Chinese economy. But the other thing that it's doing is the Communist Party right now is in a panic because from the very first moments of the pandemic, we go back to 2020, like January, The party has been using its control of COVID to say that it is as a superior form of government, that Chinese communism is better than Western democracy. So every COVID case now is considered to be a threat to Communist Party rule. It's a test of legitimacy. And, Canada, the United States, Sweden, we're all doing okay. But China right now is really tied up in fits. And I think Xi Jinping is just going berserk.
Wow. I know we only have you for a few more minutes. I'm really grateful for you joining us at this hour. Let me bring my friend Sheila Gunn-Reid in. She's based in northern Alberta, our chief reporter. Sheila, you really have at our disposal in Gordon one of the world's most foremost America-oriented, national interest-oriented geopolitical observers. So put your best question to Gordon while we've got him for a few more minutes.
That's a lot of pressure, boss. I wonder, is this Chinese overreaction, is it threatening to spill over in the region in the same way that it did back in 2020?
I don't think so, Sheila. And the reason is everyone's looking at this and saying, China is just destroying itself. This is a case of national suicide. And I don't think other countries want to do that. So, other countries in the region, all surrounding China, are taking much more relaxed views of the disease and are getting through it a lot better. China is the only country that is at this point trying to destroy itself.
Gordon, great to see you again, my friends. As I always tell you when we have Gordon on the show, do yourself a favor on Twitter. Gordon G. Chang is the Twitter handle to follow. I learn more from Gordon than from all other China observers combined. Great to see you again, my friend. Thanks for taking the time with us.
Well, thank you, Ezra, and thank you, Sheila.
Right on.
You got it.
All right, there he is. And up next, we're going to visit with a friend of ours in the region, Ian Miles Chong, who is a writer for Rebel News, is actually based, not too far away. He's in Malaysia. The sun never sets on the Rebel News empire. We have reporters on the ground in 4 countries. And, of course, Ian Miles Chong joins us from Asia himself. He'll be joining us in a few minutes. I look forward to talking to him. He is geographically out there, but he is electronically everywhere. Ian Miles Chong, one of the most avid Twitterers, and I enjoy watching his banter with anybody and everybody on Twitter, including lately Elon Musk, and of course in the past President Trump. So I like getting a read on him. He's extremely online, as the kids say. So we'll talk to him in a few minutes. When I asked Gordon about foreign affairs, I was thinking of Russia and Ukraine. I was thinking of China. I wasn't thinking of Mexico and fentanyl. When I thought of Mexico, I was just thinking, okay, open borders, immigration, amnesty, that kind of stuff. But I forgot about the fentanyl business. That is a communist China business. And what a great point he makes, that in a total surveillance state, you cannot run an industry like that without falling afoul of the authorities. So they are obviously operating with the assent of the Communist Party, because talk about a way to undermine America through disease and death than to give them dangerous drugs.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Belt and Road Project, but for opioids. It's just their way of taking over the world without ever firing a shot.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's funny because I was just today, Vladimir Zelensky, the leader of Ukraine, is talking about having peace talks with Russia. And until now, he has basically ruled it out without a series of preconditions. And isn't it funny how that is changing already? And I think it's a reaction to the likelihood that the Republicans will take the House, and that the really unconditional flow of, $80 billion? Like, when you've got tough times in America, when you've got inflation, when you've got high gas prices, I think foreign aid is always unpopular in America. It just always is. And such a staggering sum sent so quickly with so little scrutiny would be contentious no matter what. But to add to that, the fact that America is in tough economic times right now, it's just I think that exacerbated things. I wonder what streeters on the man on the street interviews on the question would be like. I think it's not top of mind, but if anyone mentioned it, it would just irritate people's pre-existing concerns about the economy.
Well, especially when you have places like Los Angeles seeing third world illnesses or like dark ages illnesses like the plague make a resurgence because of the conditions in which homeless people and the drug addicted, thank you China, are living in. It seems hardly very unpopular to be sending so much unfettered cash to Ukraine, but also Zelensky agreeing to peace talks right now. I'm old enough to remember, about 8 days ago when Elon Musk got in a world of trouble for that. And everybody wanted him kicked off of the platform he was just about to buy because he suggested that very thing, which is all of a sudden popular now. And it's funny how that, that's how COVID skeptics were treated until they were proven right. I guess the timeline's just a lot faster. It takes a little over a week instead of a little over 18 months these days.
Here's a story that I just found randomly on MSN. I'll put it in Slack if our team wants to try and put this. And by the way, we got some super chats. We should come back and read those. So I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal as republished on MSN. Zelensky sets conditions for genuine peace talks with Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he was open to negotiation with Russia if they are focused on safeguarding Ukraine's territorial integrity, compensating Kiev, and bringing justice to perpetrators of war crimes. Speaking ahead of his address to a global climate summit in Egypt on Tuesday, Mr. Zelensky said late Monday, anyone who treats seriously the climate agenda should just as seriously treat the necessity of immediately stopping Russian aggression, resuming our territorial integrity, and forcing Russia into genuine peace talks. Now, of course, those are very stringent preconditions. That's how you go into a negotiation. You have your opening offer, and the other side has their opening offer. But the very fact that he's saying, yes, I would have peace talks, here are my conditions, but I would have peace talks, that is a change of tune, and there is nothing else that could explain this other than the election tonight, where the Democrat, it's so odd to me. When I was growing up, the left was for free speech, the right was for militarism, the left was for peace now, and the right was for, neocons were let's go save the world and invade the world. And now you have the Democrats are the party of war, and the Democrats are not the party of peace. Like, I don't know if you remember, I'm old enough to remember that during the Iraq War, I remember attending the Toronto Film Festival during the Iraq War. Every bloody film was against the war. Every single one of them. And at every event there was, I think it was Code Pink, if it was called, or something like that. And there were all these anti-war, where are they? And remember the Union of Concerned Scientists, I think it was called, or Federation of American Scientists or something. They would have this doomsday clock that they would say, oh my God, we're this close to nuclear war. Like, where are all those people now? And it's just so odd to me. And I'm not pro-Putin, obviously, and I'm not pro-invade your neighbors, obviously. But when you fight or have a proxy fight with an opponent, even if their conventional army is a little rusty, well, they've got nukes, and even if half of them don't work, well, that's still half the do. And I wonder what politicians in an earlier era would have thought about the blasé way that America's having a proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. The poor Ukrainian people are the battleground being turned into powder. But I think this delegated battle of the Clash of the Titans in Ukraine is very dangerous.
Well, I'm old enough to remember 2014, 2015. Rand Paul was an outlier in the Republican Party for his staunch anti-war, anti-foreign aid, anti-foreign meddling stance. And now people are falling, he is the mainstream. That's the mainstream consensus in the Republican Party. And that switch sure happened fast.
Yeah. Just one more headline I'll read, and then we'll go to Ian Miles-Chong. This is in Breitbart. Zelensky claims Ukraine has repeatedly proposed genuine peace negotiations with Russia. Now, I'm not sure if that's if that's accurate. I mean, who knows? It's so hard to figure out what's true and what's spin. But that's certainly not be the language of Joe Biden. Again, as Gordon said, this is not a key issue in the campaign, but it is in the background. Now, I understand our friend Ian Mouse Chong is on standby. He is geographically a few thousand miles to the west of us, but he is electronically all around us. Ian Mouse Chong, Still Gray on Twitter, joins us now. Great to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you? I'm loving this red tide that is happening right now. It's amazing.
Well, tell me some of the races you're following. I'm obsessed with Georgia. I'm very nervous about it. What are you following? What races do you think are the ones to watch?
Well, the one to watch obviously is DeSantis. We knew he was going to win, but by how much, right? Because he's a genuine threat to Trump, and he has won Florida by 19 points, possibly 20. We don't know
20.
Yet.
It's 20 right now, it looks like.
That's insane. Yeah, so he won that, and that just shows that there is a shift coming, and the whole party is going along with it, and that's a good thing. That's a damn good thing. And by the way, since you're watching Florida as well, Stacey Abrams lost, so Brian Kemp won.
Right.
Yep.
4 more years of election denial. That's what we're going to get out of her.
$105 million. That's how much she spent on her campaign. Burned all that money.
Unbelievable. Well, you know what? I just checked the Georgia Senate race, and I know people are saying, Ezra, why do you care so much about Georgia? Well, first of all, I love the state. And second of all, I feel like it was robbed last time. And I know I can't talk about literally being robbed because that would get us canceled on YouTube, but I'd be emotionally robbed. And I'm looking right now, and Herschel Walker has a teeny tiny lead, 49.2%, to the Democrats' 48.9%. So the Republican actually, it's like a sliver, like it's just a 7,000 vote lead with more than 3 million votes cast. But earlier tonight I was wailing and bemoaning that he was behind. So with 71% of votes in, the Republican is ahead by a nose.
Yeah, I think he's going to win. I've got a good feeling for it.
Wow, that would be quite something. What other races are you taking a look at? Sheila, is there something you're following in particular?
Oh, I'm just taking a peek at the Arkansas governor's race. Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be following her dad's footsteps there. Handily. She won. Yeah, so that's great. And, I just love to see Beto O'Rourke lose so much.
Oh, he lost.
They really poured a ton into him. He lost, I think, by 8 points. I guess that endorsement by the Dixie Chicks or whatever they call themselves these days
didn't work.
Didn't really help him all that much. So that's good to know.
Well, Ian, you write a lot of stories for Rebel News, but I think one of your ninja skills, your Jedi-level skills, is on the Twitter machine. And I know that, like us, you've been riveted by Elon Musk's on again, then off again, then on again takeover of Twitter, and his attempt to purge it of its ideological bias has been fascinating to watch. I don't think they actually changed any of the content moderation, really.
No,
I think he said that's going to be...
They're applying it fairly now, right? Impersonation before, if you were a liberal and you started impersonating Donald Trump, you'd be fine. But that's not fair, right? I mean, and keep in mind, people are really mad at Elon Musk because he started banning people for impersonating him. But he wasn't the only person that they were impersonating. They were trying to do it to conservatives as well. Like Andy Ngo, I believe, somebody got banned for impersonating Andy Ngo. So the attack on him, they're claiming that he's banning them because he can't take criticism. Well, that's clearly false. People have been making fun of him all week long. They're fine. It's a matter of maintaining the site's integrity. Because if he allows them to impersonate him or anybody else, what's to stop some 4chaner from logging onto the site and pretending to be Joe Biden or AOC, right? Like that is, they would call it violence. They would say that it's a threat to their representation, to their brand. So I understand the ban. It's always been there. It's been there for 10 years.
I'm going to interrupt myself, Ian, which I do all the time, and say that the very first results, it's only 7% of the votes are in, so it's too early to say in any way, but I'm delighted to say that the Arizona governor election results, so far, these first 7%, have Carrie Lake, the Republican insurgent, with 58%, and Katie Hobbs, who really was dodging her for the longest time didn't want to debate, etc., is in the 40s. So what a pleasure to see that. And to see Herschel Walker's ahead by a nose in Georgia. I'm feeling really good all of a sudden. Let me get back to Twitter, though.
Yeah.
You know, I saw Elon Musk actually had a kind of endorsement of the Republicans. It was sort of a weak endorsement. He just sort of said, you know, vote to maintain a check on power. Biden's to the presidency. Vote Republican. I've been Democrat till now. Like I don't think it moved a single person. No one was saying but what it did.
Definitely not.
What's incredible about it, like obviously it's not, oh my, I didn't know what I was going to vote for, but Elon Musk had sort of a technical reason, so I don't think it was that. I think it was him saying, I am the only big tech person in Silicon Valley who would ever even say he's a Republican, with the exception of Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
And so you know that I'm at least fair-minded and I'm open to both sides. So it wasn't him trying to tilt the vote. It was him saying, I really am a friend to all sides. I'm not in the pocket of the Democrats, and this is a very different Twitter. It was not actually a statement on the election. It was a statement about Twitter. That's what I think that was.
I think so, too. I think it's about having the freedom to express your beliefs. I mean, it shows that you shouldn't be afraid. And he even pointed out in a separate tweet that he made, I think a few minutes after the one that you posted on screen, it was that in San Francisco, it's almost a crime to come out as a Republican or even to know a Republican, to be friends with one. Yeah.
Right.
So it's a commentary on that. It's that cancel culture. That's what he's really talking about.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, you know, Twitter really is a battleground for the media class, the political class. I mean, other people use it for other reasons too. Sports, entertainment, companies have a presence on there. There's a lot of fun things and good, useful things, whether it's weather or just local news. But what I'm finding so delicious is that Twitter has sort of a caste system. You know, I was never in a fraternity in university. I just never did. But there are some schools like Yale and Harvard where they have these very old fraternities, and some of them you can't apply for. You have to be chosen. You're tapped on the shoulder and asked, do you want to join? I forget which secret society that was it George Bush Sr. was joined in.
Skull and Bones.
Yeah, something like that.
Skull and Bones.
Like you're tapped on the shoulder from behind. You're asked, do you want to join? You have to answer immediately on the spot. And, and like it's very cryptic and, you know, ritualistic, and it's the kind of thing that maybe in Eyes Wide Shut you'd see, and Freemasonry, like all these little, and that occult nature of it is what makes it mysterious and powerful, is that you can't say, I want to be in the Skull and Bones. You have to be recruited into it, if I'm remembering it correctly. That's the blue check mark. It's not a verification device. Like if I want to be verified, like if I have online banking, like to open a crypto account, I got to upload my passport and a photo of myself, and I have to write something. Like I know how to verify myself, and the world of apps knows how to verify, because everyone's doing commerce on their phone. You have to. So verifying is one thing. The blue check mark is not to verify you; it's to anoint you. It's to bestow upon you a membership in the Skull and Bones. And if you if you have to ask for it, that just shows how much you don't deserve it. You know, anyone who asks for it's too gauche. Oh, you're not. And the funny thing is, I got a blue check. I didn't ask for it. I don't know how I got it, but I suppose I'm glad to have it. But when Elon Musk said we're actually going to turn it into a verification tool. So that we know who's not a bot, so everyone can get it. And by the way, let's make some money for Twitter for once, and we can favor those who pay their $8 a month for the blue check mark by making their results come in higher in the searches, because at least we know they're real, because no bot is going to spend $8 a month on a robot. So there's a real logic to it. But the gnashing of the teeth of the blue check mark, no, the Skull and Bones, I'm in this club and I don't want
losing
him.
the exclusivity.
Oh, you know what? It's hard to mass market exclusivity. I suppose American Express tries to do that. They want you to feel elite, but they want everyone to have it. You know, the Skull and Bones Club, they don't want Like every time a blue check mark gets out, it's like theirs is diluted. And the idea that it's amazing to me, and I love it. And for the first time, it's given me some hope that maybe social media isn't just going to be like a China-style social credit panopticon. Now, I don't want to get my hopes too high because they're going to be dashed. But that's how I feel about it. I thought I'd ask you because you're our Twitter star.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Everything you said is correct. And one thing that is an unspoken benefit of having that blue check mark is the ability to communicate directly with everybody else who has that check mark, because you've got a verified tab. You can basically filter out the useless mention system because, once you have like 100,000 followers, that system is useless to you. You're not going to be using it anymore because there's too many people, too many replies, too many engagements. So you have to filter them by verified. And also, when a verified user messages you, like directly on, like ats you, you're going to see it on your phone. So if I were to add, or if you were to add, since you have a blue check mark as well, you were to send an at say AOC, she will literally see it on her phone. That's how powerful this tool is. Yeah. And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody.
Very interesting. Well, I'm glad that Elon Musk is tearing it up a bit, and I can see the boycotting, the advertiser boycotts. They're trying to roll him. It'll be interesting to see if they succeed. I mean, he's a rich guy, but he's not richer than the rest of the world combined. I mean, they could break him.
They could try.
It'll be fascinating to see. I mean, he's done impossible things before. There used to be a movie, Who Killed the Electric Car? Well, Elon Musk made it. And then the idea of a man having a private rocket ship company. Like, he does things that are supposed to be impossible. He thinks differently than the rest of us. He's quite a character. I'm a little nervous about the fact that he's exposed to communist China because he has a Tesla factory there. He wants that market.
Yeah.
Anyone who's exposed to China is exposed to their duress and their bullying and their threats. And that's the one thing that makes me nervous about him. What do you think?
I think it's a thing to watch out for. And Elon Musk, people need to realize that he's an engineer. He's about fixing things. So when people try to bully him on Twitter, scolding him or making fun of him, he doesn't take that feedback very, very well. I mean, who would? He wants to fix things. So if you want him to do something, you have to be constructive. So if you have any concerns, definitely bring it up with him, but don't be like, oh, you're a China shill. Like that would immediately turn him off. Yeah. And that's what people don't seem to understand. Right. They seem to think that he's a politician, that he can be cajoled into behaving certain ways. He won't. He's not like that.
Right. Oh, and that's good advice, of course. I suppose that's good advice for dealing with anyone. And I'm certainly not attacking Elon Musk. I think he's one of the most important public personalities. I'd even call him a public intellectual. I think he's a contrarian. He's a solutions-oriented guy. He's a bit of a philosopher.
He's a futurist. He sees things we haven't even thought about yet.
Yeah.
Yep. He's the man in the middle, right? If you ever read the book, he's the man in the middle right now.
And he's got a sense of humor that is undeniable. It's a quirky, self-deprecating sense of humor. It's very different than Donald Trump, for example, who's got a great sense of humor too. Well, listen, Ian, it's great to catch up with you, and thanks for joining us. I can only imagine what hour it is where you are, but thanks for. I'm sure
it's
you're
morning.
Well, there you go. I'm sure you're watching.
It's all good.
Well, right on. Thanks for joining us.
What time am I talking to you at during the day when you're working for us then?
Midnight, past midnight, And now since, daylight savings, it's like 11 p.m. That's when we're talking. It's awful.
I'm just so sorry.
Well, there he is, Ian Malmstrong, our Twitter star and an avid writer for Rebel News. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Cheers. Great to see you. Well, you know what, Sheila? I'm in good spirits, not just because we're talking about Twitter, which makes me happy, but I am taking a glance at the great state of Georgia. And I used to, before the lockdown, I still can't go into the United States because I'm not jabbed, and they have that anti-jab ban until January. And I see that Biden has extended it to January, and I think it's because he knows that after these Republicans are sworn in, that no jab ban will end.
Yep.
I used to drive from Toronto into New York, down to Pennsylvania, through West Virginia, and then Virginia, and then North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, stop for boiled peanuts, and go to Florida. I have an affection for Georgia, and in the family wagon, we were trying to sing songs for every state we were in, like Country Roads Take Me Home when we were in West Virginia. But I love Georgia. They're so polite there. It's great weather. It's beautiful. And so it broke my heart 2 years ago, Sheila. I won't lie to you. I was hurt. I've been carrying that hurt with me for 2 years. And now an interesting feller named Herschel Walker is carrying the Republican standard. And I'm just going to tell you the latest, and maybe we can go to that map. Herschel Walker leads by 15,000 votes. Now, that is just a teeny tiny amount. That is a teeny. Can we get the map on the screen? I'm just on the foxnews.com map, and then I click Senate, and then I click map, and then I put my cursor over the state of Georgia, which is just abuts Florida. It is close. It is an iota. It's a jot. It's a micron. It's a millimeter. It's so little. But I think that maybe he can win. On the other hand, news from Arizona, Kari Lake is now back a bit. 40% of the votes are in. Still too early to call it. I don't know. I'm starting to ramble a little bit. This is what happens after 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's the results from Arizona. The Democrats. That's the Arizona results. Again, too close to tell. Now, New York, unfortunately.
Yep.
The Republican trails, but that's still too early to call, too. I mean, oddly.
32%.
Yeah. Most of the votes have not counted. I mean, the polls have been closed for hours. I remember growing up in Canada, the numbers would be known within a couple of hours. Like, just everybody, you're not counting all, however, millions of votes at the same time. Everyone in every district and every poll counts them. So there's only a few hundred to count in every location. You can do that in a couple hours. I mean, there's no reason for this high-tech approach. I think it just adds uncertainty and vulnerability to security. There's nothing, you can't hack a pencil and paper.
Yeah.
What are you looking at, Sheila? What
I'm just looking at Arizona. It's 40% reported, just about 38%. I sure like Kari Lake, though, because I love the way she handles the media, and I think that's because she's from the media.
Yeah.
She knows how to deal with these people, and she's not scared of them. A lot of politicians are intimidated by the media, and I guess they should be. The media in the before times used to hold politicians to account on behalf of the people. But she deals with them the way they deserve to be dealt with. And I think that's why she has so many interesting sound bites out there.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, she's really great. She's got a certain aggressive style, but she manages to be sort of friendly, even as she does it, which I sort of like.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm just going to, while you do something, I'm going to check on the Alberta election results because the polls have closed 20 minutes ago here for Danielle Smith's by-election.
You know, I just found a Kari Lake video about election deniers, and Efron, I put that in the Slack channel. Can you put that on screen? I'm not sure if this is the one I had in mind because I don't want to play it here with the audio, but this is an example of Kari Lake in action. This might be the one I've been looking for.
If you're going to start throwing around terms like election denier, let's remember who the other election deniers were: Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats. Next question.
So the question is, you over the weekend, you took the Google all over the world. Your name was ringing everywhere. And one of them, yes, ma'am, because I have the scale. And one of them has, and most of them were asking, is she an election denier, Kari Lake? And that was like going around on all different cable news. What do you elaborate on this?
I'm actually shocked you asked that question, George.
Well,
actually, Anthony, where's Anthony?
Once in a while.
Here, Anthony. You know, I did a little, actually, Anthony, how old are you?
20.
Are you a journalist?
No.
Well, you did better research than half these people. Let's talk about election deniers. Here's 150 examples of Democrats denying election results. Oh, wow, look at this. This is from Joe Biden's press secretary. Reminder, Brian Kemp stole the gubernatorial election from Georgians and Stacey Abrams. Democrats saying that. Is that an election denier? Oh, look at this. Just heard Republican Ryan Costello said it would be difficult for Stacey Abrams to win because she lost her state bid, but yet she's still claiming she never lost. This is outrageous. Hillary Clinton, Trump is an illegitimate president. Is she an election denier? This one says, was the 2016 election legitimate? It now definitely is a question worth asking. That's the Los Angeles Times. So it's okay for Democrats to question elections, but it's not okay for Republicans. It's a crock of BS. Every one of you knows it. We have our freedom of speech, and we're not going to relinquish it to a bunch of fake news propagandists. If you want a copy of these, I'm sure that Anthony would help you get a copy and help you learn how to be journalists, but look it up. It's been happening for a long time. Since 2000, people have questioned the legitimacy of our elections. And all we're asking is that in the future, we don't have that have to happen anymore. When I'm governor, when I'm governor, we're going to make sure we have honest elections. We want the Democrats, the independents, and the Republicans to all know that their vote counted. We want fair, honest, and transparent elections, and we're going to deliver that for the people. But just remember, guys, this is one page after Hillary Clinton says George W. Bush was selected president, not elected. So let's start, if you're going to start throwing around terms like election denier, let's remember who the other election deniers were, Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats.
She's so tough. I get such a kick out of her. She also has a beautiful voice. You know what? Sometimes
TV voice.
And I think it's just something, one of life's quirks, that sometimes women in politics, their voice can be a detriment. I mean, how do you be loud without sounding screechy? It's a pitch thing. And Carrie Lake has a slightly deeper, richer voice that actually sounds, it's beautiful to listen to. Compare that to, say, Hillary Clinton's cackle. And so, I mean, Carrie Lake's attractive, smart, journalistically savvy, tough, but I really get a kick out of her. I want to show you. I think, frankly, she can get away with things that a guy couldn't, because it would just be too brutal for a man to do. I want to show you when Carrie Lake was accosted by a CNN reporter. This is so mean. I felt bad for the reporter. I never feel bad for the media party. This was so brutal. I think the only reason Carrie Lake got away with it is because she's a woman with a smile, and just like if Donald Trump did this, it would just be a scandal. Take a look at Carrie Lake being asked a question by a CNN reporter, and it's important that you know that she's from CNN. Take a look.
Hi.
Carrie.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Count off and CNN.
You don't have a mask on anymore. What's going
we're
on?
outside. Do you have a minute to chat?
Well, we're 6 feet apart.
Do you have a minute to chat?
I'll do an interview.
Okay.
As long as it airs on CNN Plus. Oh. Does that still exist? I didn't think so, because the people don't like what you guys are peddling, which is propaganda. Thank you.
I have never seen anything tougher than that in my life. Have you seen that before, Sheila?
No, but you know what else she did? She hung on to the lady's hand as a sign of domination, but also to keep that lady from getting away. Watch.
Right.
She hangs on to her hand the whole time.
Right.
I'm about to roll you up in a carpet and into the ditch. So she doesn't let go of her. Look, she's trying to, she keeps shaking her hand. She can't get away.
I didn't notice that. That's so.
Carrie pulls her closer too, as a sign of domination.
Because she
Very good,
she wanted
Carrie.
to get her lines out to her face without her running away.
Yep.
Would you agree with me that that is one of the toughest things you've ever seen in your life?
She's deadly.
Yeah.
She's
deadly.
It
it was just such a pleasure to see. I got a real kick out of that. Now let me check with our team. Olivia and Efron working so hard and so late. I really appreciate it. How are we doing with the prospect of connecting with okay, we're 1 minute away from Katie, who is in the Pacific Northwest. I'm hearing some audio. I don't know if that's from the control room or from you, Sheila, but anyway, I thought that was just great with Carrie Lake. Hey, let's just check on Georgia. Can we do that? Do you guys in control room? Can you go to the map for the Georgia Senate? I know my boiled peanut story and the peaches. I've been to Peachland in Georgia. There's a lot of things to visit when you're on a road trip with kids. But really, I want Herschel Walker to win. And right now, he leads by 25,000 votes, which is so close. So close. So Here's the official results. Look
It's
at that.
so close, but I hope he wins. He
Herschel
worked so
Walker,
hard for this.
Yeah, ahead of Raphael Warnock. Gave the Democrats victory in the Senate last time. Raphael Warnock was the first black senator from Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. And now there's 2 black candidates, Republican, Democrat. Very interesting little thing. Now, I note that the Libertarian, has 64,000 votes. Isn't that something? I don't know who the Libertarians would vote for. They probably wouldn't vote for anyone if they didn't have their Libertarian candidate, but it's quite something to me that that's the margin between the two. Oh, I hope that holds on. Like I say, it's got to be more than the margin of lawyer and more than the margin of cheating.
Yeah.
Now, I see in the background our friend Katie Daviscourt is on location at I think in Seattle or King County, Republican. We just need 1 more minute. She's just getting set up. I just see her in the background there. It'll be fun to catch up with her. On the far west, it's only 7:30, so I don't think the polls are closed out there. I don't think there's anything that's really up in the air other than what Joel Pollack mentioned to us. Not a federal race, not a senator or congressman, not a governor, but the mayor of Los Angeles, by many measures, the second most important, large economic, diverse city, like a very important city, L.A., amazing city that has had a terrible turn. And you might recall that just a few weeks ago, the city of Vancouver, which has some similarities with Seattle, has some similarities with San Francisco, a few similarities with the L.A., they threw out their soft-on-crime, pro-drug use, defund the cops mayor. They threw out the
NDP
incumbent.
mayor.
He used to be an NDP member of parliament, and they replaced him with a pro-cop, pro-business candidate who happened to be a new Canadian, Chinese Canadian, and it was wonderful to see. I was shocked. And L.A., which is so bad, like homelessness everywhere, homeless encampments. You would think in some parts that you're in either a post-apocalyptic ruin or a third world slum. That's L.A. And you heard Joel, the candidate who's running is a business person. He's not calling himself a Republican because that is too difficult.
I don't think you can.
Yeah. And there's a chance he might win. I'm hopeful that L.A. will get a sensible mayor probably the first time in a very long time. So that's really what I'm interested in on the West Coast. Arizona, I'm looking at early returns on the Senate race. 39% of the votes are in, and my favorite candidate, Blake Masters, the Peter Thiel acolyte and Trumpy guy, is at 41%, trailing the Democrat pretty seriously. But like I say, it's only 39% of the votes in so far. I sure want Blake Masters in there. You might be thinking, Ezra, why do you care? You're a Canadian. What do you care? Well, I care because I think that the world has been out of joint with Joe Biden as president and with the Democrat Congress. I think the world is a more dangerous place. I think the world's economy is a less prosperous place. I think there's a lot of bad things going on because of what happened in 2020. And I think that could be righted by giving the Republicans control of the Senate. And if that happened in Georgia and Arizona, it would be a wonderful thing to see. I'm also a little bit nervous about Pennsylvania, where half the votes are in, and Fetterman, the stroke victim, is leading Dr. Oz, not by a lot.
No.
And again, maybe it's the big Democrat city of Philadelphia that's counting the votes first. So you like I think
that's what's happening in Arizona. Also, sounds like Maricopa County is coming in a little quicker than everywhere else, and that is the most populous county. So I don't know.
And in Georgia too, Herschel Walker was behind. Now he's ahead by 30,000 votes. Now again, that's out of 3 million. That's only 1%. But I'm allowing myself to have a little hope. All right. Well, we started the show some 3 hours ago by talking to Yankee Pollock in Florida. He's one of our rebels. And then we went to New York City, where we talked to Jeremy Lafredo. And now we're going to go to the other side of the U.S. and A to talk to Katie Daviscourt, who's one of the newest rebels. And she is at the Grand Old Party of Victory celebration and is ready to join us now via Skype. Hey, Katie, how you doing? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys. Can you guys hear me?
We sure can. And it looks like you're outside a convention center room. People are milling around. I guess it's still early there. Polls have not yet closed in Washington State. Is that right?
That's correct. We are not going to have our first ballot drop until around 8 p.m. So we have about another, I don't know what time it is. I kind of lost track, but I think another 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, it looks like people are all excited and milling around. It looks like a furry friend. It looked like you had a furry friend there, but it was someone. I'm joking around. Now, we talked earlier on the Ezra Levant show. I appreciate you taking the time there. And you pointed out to me that Washington State is actually a pretty conservative state, with the huge exception of Seattle, but most of it is red. And that they're conservative, it is like the Pacific Northwest country, hunting, outdoorsy. Are there any things you're keeping an eye on, either in your home state of Washington or nearby Oregon, or even in California? We were talking earlier with Joel Pollack, who says he's got a flicker of hope for the mayor down there. What are you keeping an eye on in that Pacific time zone, Katie?
Yeah, right. So here right now, I am in Bellevue at the Washington GOP watch party for Senate candidate Tiffany Smiley and House candidate Matt Larkin. They are the two biggest players tonight. So they have the chance to actually flip their seats, both of them, and they are currently polling higher than the incumbent candidate. So tonight is very exciting. As you can see, there are tons of people gathered, hundreds in Washington State. They all showed out because this election is personal. They want change. And as you can see, there are people from all backgrounds. The Republican Party is not just old white men. There are people from all ethnicities, all races, women. They all came out to support because they want change and they want to make their voices heard. So not only Senate candidate Tiffany Smiley and Matt Larkin, but Doug Vassar is here too. He is hoping to flip his district. And then we also have Joe Kent, that is a little bit south of Washington, who has very high chances of winning his district as well.
Now, Joe Kent is very interesting. If I'm not mistaken, he's a veteran who actually, his wife was serving in the armed forces as well. And if I'm not mistaken, she passed away. So he's a veteran and a widower, and he's America First. And he's, you correct me if I'm wrong on these details. I just forgot about Joe Kent until you mentioned him again. He's actually a pretty incredible candidate, isn't he?
He is, yep. He's Trump endorsed. He is a gold star husband, as you mentioned, and he is someone that big tech attacked from the start of his campaign because he was such a prominent voice in the state, and they censored him on all platforms. So the fact that he won his primary and is able to poll and maybe pull to victory tonight will be a huge feat for maybe the rest of the country to see that you can fight back against big tech, you can get censored, and you can still win your election.
It's very interesting to me, and I'm glad you reminded me of him. And I mean, he's in so many ways he looks like an amazing candidate. Not just his sacrifice, but he's also very handsome, and he's very ideologically strong. I'm gonna send.
Yeah, the ladies love him.
I mean, I'm straight as an arrow, but I'm not blind. He's when I looked at him first, I thought I'm just looking in the mirror.
Don't be defensive.
I thought I'm looking in the mirror here. It's like I finally found my doppelganger, and that's not a sexual word. Doppelganger just means Play this video from Joe Kent. Play this sound up.
It's incredible.
And oppose reckless spending. Perez supports higher taxes on energy and on families earning less than $150,000. I'll fight for lower taxes and energy independence. Perez will give us 2 more years of Speaker Pelosi, and we can't afford that. I'm Joe Kent, Republican for Congress, and I approve this message.
Like I say, it's just like you're just looking at me. It's like you just saw my twin brother.
Yeah,
and Zac Efron's older brother.
Yeah, and you know what? Another great thing about Joe Kent was after the 2020 election, the GOP put out a campaign that if any Republicans voted to impeach Joe Biden, they would be primaried. And Joe Kent is one of the ones that defeated Jamie Herrera Beutler in the primaries, who voted to She was a Republican that voted to impeach President Trump. So that is a victory in itself.
Very interesting. Well, you know what? I'm hopeful. Is there anything going on in California? And we did talk to Joel earlier, and he was reflecting on the mayor's race there. I mean, a lot of I haven't been to L.A. in a while, but last time I was in San Francisco, I went to a nice restaurant for dinner, like a very nice restaurant, and I literally had to step over a homeless drug addict to get out of the, like it was a juxtaposition. I've seen poor people before and I've seen fancy places before, but to literally get out of this restaurant, I had to step over a drug addict lying there. And I was shocked by it. I think that's the new normal in cities like Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, LA. Basically, it's becoming that way in New York City, Baltimore for sure, Philadelphia, like all these Democrat cities. And you have covered a lot of this, Katie. You covered the Antifa riots. Is there any indication that ordinary people are fatigued by all this and they're tired of it, and they just, they might consider themselves liberal or even left-wing, but they just want to live a normal, peaceful, safe, prosperous life, and they don't want to live in like some Mad Max movie?
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly correct. So Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, we call it the far left coast here in America. They all have criminal lawlessness and policies that are high on crime. And most of the Republican candidates, actually, their main platforms for this election cycle was running on crime. And you see people getting primaried. You see Democrats turning out they voted Democrat in the past, and they are now voting Republican strictly because the crime is trickling down across where they live in their cities, across their entire states, and they are tired of it. I said earlier that this election is personal, and it is. And when you have high crime, you lose your sense of freedom. And in America, we're all about freedom, but you can't have liberty when you don't have police and you become victim to crime.
Yeah. Sheila, do you have any questions for Katie or any comments?
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that Tiffany Smiley's husband is also a combat veteran. And I'm just curious, what are some of the other issues that she's been campaigning on? Where, like all across the United States, we're hearing, especially in the major progressive run cities, it's crime in New York, it's crime in LA, it's crime on the far left coast. What else are voters' issues there?
Yeah, so she's also running on securing the U.S. southern border because a lot of the fentanyl comes in through there. And obviously, Joe Biden, I believe that he has let in about 2 million illegal immigrants into the country. So that is one of her main platforms. She's running on inflation. And she is a mom of 4 kids. Her husband is legally blind. He lost his eyesight in the war. And so she is also running for families. She believes in school choice. She believes in kids and the nuclear family unit. That is something that the Democrat side does not believe in. They are Marxists, want to destroy the nuclear family. And so that are some other policies that she's running on. And I think that drew a lot of support for her because she's running against a 30-year Democrat incumbent who only passed 9 bills her entire 30 years. And it is time to retire Patty Murray. That is why so many people showed up tonight, hundreds, in the state of Washington, which is truly incredible because they want change and they want to see a victory tonight.
Well, Katie, it's a very exciting night. I mean, I get the feeling I'm going to stay up late just to make sure there's no last-minute shenanigans. Great to see you out there. Thanks for covering the West Coast, or the far left coast, as you called it, for Rebel News, and we look forward to your reports in the days ahead on the details. And I'm rooting for Joe Kent and all the other freedom-oriented Republicans. So thanks for joining us, Katie.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Right on. Cheers.
Thanks, Katie.
Well, Sheila, it is 10:41 Eastern Time, 8:41 Mountain Time. Can you tell us, I don't think there's any suspense in the matter, is Danielle Smith, has a vote started coming in from the Brooks by-election? Not yet. Got it.
Not yet. I'm watching very carefully. It sounds like elections, Alberta doesn't think that they're going to have the results until 10 p.m. my time.
Midnight our time. Got it.
Midnight your time, but I'm sure she's a shoo-in. She's running against an NDP candidate who is I think she's some sort of social studies teacher, which is a little on the nose. But yeah, I'm sure she'll take that home pretty easily, despite the fear-mongering from the mainstream media boosting the NDP candidate there.
Well, I am looking at those close races. 72% of the votes are in the Georgia Senate race. Herschel Walker is ahead by 27,000, or about just under 1%. Makes me nervous, but I have a flicker of hope. Turning my attention to Arizona. Too early to say, and I'm not even going to call it because only 41% of the votes are in. And like I said, that could be from the left-wing counties.
Yeah,
Arizona governor.
That could be just Maricopa.
Yeah. Yep. So on the gubernatorial side, you can see that only half the votes are in. Carrie Lake trailing, and about the same percentages, almost exactly the same percentages on the Senate side. New York, a little bit disappointing to me, I will not lie. I thought there was a flicker of a chance that Lee Zeldin, the Republican, would have a chance. But again, I don't know why New York has only counted 38% of its votes. So the fact that Lee Zeldin trails significantly is too early to put any stock in that. We'll have to stay up late for that. You know what, Sheila? I feel like the story of the night, if I had to call it, would be the vindication and the establishment of Ron DeSantis as America's leading governor. I mean, we felt that in our bones. We felt that emotionally and morally. But any man who can win with such a convincing number, as you said, more Republican than Texas now, who can win Latinos and Hispanic voters over, actually win, not just do better than before, but actually get most votes in Miami-Dade. Most. I know that place. It's cool. It was like it's where Will Smith, Miami, my second home, Miami Sound Machine. Like, it's a cool place. And it voted Republican? How? Well, Ron DeSantis is a big part of that answer. The craziness of the Democrats, there's a push and a pull. The push is the crazy Democrats saying Latinx, trans this, socialist that. I mean, that's the thing. You come from a country like Venezuela or Cuba, and there's a lot of Venezolanos in Miami, just like there's a lot of Cubanos there. And they see someone like AOC who grew up in a luxury home, and the closest thing she's had to hard work is bartending, talking, I love socialism.
Yeah, wearing $4,000 shoes. Yeah.
You love socialism, and first of all, you don't even mean it. But second of all, if you're from Venezuela or Cuba, you actually know what socialism is, and you don't appreciate this gringo, AOC. So I love socialism. Socialismo o muerte. No, sister, we know what it's like. So I think that you had the pull of Ron DeSantis. You had the push. And by the way, Mayra Flores, the Republican Latina elected in Texas, is more popular amongst Hispanics than AOC is, according to polls. So AOC is like a white man's version of a Latina. Mayra Flores is a Latina's version of a Latina. And Ron DeSantis is the Latino hero of the day. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, and, all the other governors who followed his lead, they are just absolutely killing it. I watch Kristi Noem because I think she's probably going to be a vice presidential candidate. I'm sure someone will grab her up.
Who's that, sorry?
She's Trump and Kristi Noem
in
South Dakota.
Yeah.
Like I said, last time she won with 51% of the vote. It's early numbers right now, but it's almost 64%. And as I said, she's basically destroyed the Democrat Party there. There are more independent voters registered in South Dakota than there are Democrat voters. She's out fundraised everybody. And so popular across the country for her anti-lockdown stance, following directly in the footsteps of Ron DeSantis, that she was called out to campaign in other states to help out in those tight races.
Yeah. Well, I think that she's doing great. She had a few bumps in the road. I don't think she was strong enough fighting against transgender entryism into sports, and I think she's had a few fumbles.
Yeah, me too.
But
Yeah.
in politics, you can generally recover if you do the right thing. Well, we started the night with our friend Yankee Pollock in Florida, and we will end our tour of America. We've talked to amazing people. Sheila, what a night! We started with Yankee, then we had Jeremy Lafredo, then we talked to Joel Pollack, then we came up to Ottawa, Manny Montenegrino, then we talked to Marie Oakes in Chicago, then we talked to Gordon G. Chang about foreign affairs, then we talked to Ian Miles Chong about Twitter, then we talked to Katie Davis Court about the Pacific Northwest, and now we end our full circle, our tour of the United States of America, by going back to our friend Yankee Pollock. It's very romantic where Yankee is. It's very mood lighting, a little bit of candlelight, a little bit of red wine.
Oh, Yankee.
A little bit of bubble bath. We just saw Joe Kent. In Washington. That was just a little appetizer, ladies. If you like Joe Kent, you'll love Yankee Pollock.
Ezra's back at it.
You're doing. I'm just having some fun. You know,
we've come full circle of you trying to find me a wife. But,
you know what? You know what? Blessed are the matchmakers.
He is single, ladies, by the way. Sheila at rebelnews.com. I'll be taking applications. I've been taking applications for 2 years, but you guys aren't sending me your best.
Yankee, we're just having some fun ribbing you. It's great to see you. So tell us, how's the vibe there? Are you in your vehicle? I'm trying to figure out where you are.
I am in my vehicle. They were actually kicking us out by 10:30. You had to be out of the building because it was such a decisive victory that everyone was done celebrating by like 9:45. Everyone was like, "We won!" It's like the energy in the room was so great, but it was like we won. DeSantis gave the speech, and we out. It was like it started early. It was I believe DeSantis is close to 20% in the lead. I thought maybe at 10-15%. Ezra said 15, but that is 20. And as I said earlier, I think it's really a DeSantis win, a strong Republican DeSantis win in Florida. Other places there are wins, of course, but in Florida, like even Rubio won strong, and I think it's to DeSantis's credit. I think there's a red wave, sure, but it's really a DeSantis wave on top of that red wave.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, especially in Florida. The guy had coattails, as they say. I think Rubio would have won on his own anyways. Although he didn't win with the same margin. I mean, DeSantis had almost 20-point lead. Rubio, 16 points, still pretty handsome. I got my eye on Georgia. That's the neighbor state. That's just north of Florida, and Herschel Walker still 30,000 votes ahead with 72% counted, but 1% ahead. Still too close for comfort.
The governor over there, Stacey Abrams, is she losing or winning?
The governor that's a done deal. That's Kemp, absolutely. An insurmountable lead. Yeah, unless there's absolute shenanigans, I think the Republicans are winning that.
That is.
The funny thing, we were just saying that in Texas, the governor there beat Beto by 10%, which is respectable, but that ain't no DeSantis 20%.
I'll say this about Texas. It's definitely a great state, a Republican state, but Texas governor followed Ron DeSantis when it came to lockdowns, when it came to fighting COVID, and a lot of other things. DeSantis is on the forefront. And DeSantis is, let's put it this way, probably the strongest Republican leader in the U.S. And maybe Trump is there as well, maybe. But in terms of governors, in terms of elected people right now, DeSantis is definitely the strongest, I would say.
There's a state out there, and I'll let you both guess it, where the governor is, now it's still early polls, is at 83% versus 13% to the other side.
Wyoming.
Oh, you know that. Okay, it was I would have guessed West Virginia
I
or
always
something.
watch the Western states. Those are
yeah.
my people. Those are my ideological cousins that watch the Western states, or my escape route if I need one.
maybe I was wrong, but again, it depends on the demographics of the state, right? Look at the margin. DeSantis won with 38,000 votes. That was what, a 0.2%? I don't remember the exact. And now he came in with 20%.
Yeah, Wyoming is the littlest state, I think, or Rhode Island's the littlest by population.
There's like 11 people that live there.
Yeah, but it's still fun to see those. I mean, West Virginia, there's some amazing places there. The lopsidedness, of course, the Democrats have the same thing. I'm looking at the gubernatorial numbers in Pennsylvania, and it's pretty clear that the Democrats have absolutely won the governor's race there.
Unfortunately, I expected that.
Yeah. On the Senate side in Pennsylvania, that's where Fetterman is up against Dr. Oz. It's pretty close. And I'd say that Dr. Oz is still in the fight, as you can see there. There's a 2-point gap. And given that only 61 are reporting yet, and again, we just don't know, at least I don't know, which places have reported, which counties. Is that your Democrat-leaning parts of Philadelphia?
It's beyond me how it's even a race. Fetterman, it's not even policies that you disagree with. The guy can't speak a sentence.
Yeah. And he can't even understand things.
He can't understand things, and I get it. It's a health issue. He had a stroke. I understand that. I feel for him. But at the same time, you cannot have a sitting U.S. senator that cannot do for his constituency what he's supposed to do.
Well, and not only is he not up to the job, but who will be his proxy? I remember, and I won't say her name, but I met a senator years ago when I worked in Parliament.
I know who you're talking about.
Who was so sick, but she wouldn't step down from the job because what she did is she hired her personal nurse. Instead, senators in Canada, they hire legislative assistants, constituents, like they have a staff budget. What this senator did is she hired a nurse, a personal nurse instead of an assistant, and basically used the office of the Senate as like her personal health care budget. It was super gross. And my question was, well, who's casting her vote? Who's making the decisions for her? And there was another senator who, and that's probably one you're thinking of, Sheila, who was mentally incompetent. Who was voting for that person? And with Fetterman, it's not just that he can't do it. It's, well, who will do it for him? Who will make the real decisions? Because when someone is not competent, then they're put under some sort of care. Someone is given some sort of power of attorney, some sort of springing power, like, and if they have and will we even? And he was very close to his chest about the facts. He didn't even acknowledge that he had a stroke for the longest time. Anyhow, that'll be an interesting one to watch. Sorry, go ahead, Yankee.
Yeah, one interesting race actually that I wanted to talk about is New York 17 congressional seat. It seems like the Republican will flip that seat, and that seat was a very highly contested seat with Biden coming there in upstate New York, and Biden calling a lot of rabbis actually trying to get them to endorse the Democrat. And it seems like that vote, and I used to live there in that district, 15 years ago. There's a big Jewish community, and it seems like the Jewish community flipped that seat or helped flip that seat at least.
I'm looking at New York 17. Lawler, the Republican, has a fairly commanding lead, 54% to 45% for the Democrat. New York 17, you say?
Yes, New York 17. Mike Lawler and Patrick Maloney is the Democrat, and he is also not a nobody Democrat. He sits on a few committees, so he's one of the more important Democrats, so to say. And it seems like it's not really upstate New York. It's about an hour from New York City, so it seems like it's gonna flip Republican. So, there is some good news in New York, but it doesn't seem like Zeldin will be able to pull out a win. But I think he'll do pretty well, but maybe only time will tell.
Yeah, well, I mean, about half the votes are in, and it's about 60-40 for the Democrats, and maybe that's not I mean, I think people had high hopes, and there was a hope that the red tide could carry him over. You know, I mean, New York is a pretty progressive place, and the media certainly were no friends to Zeldin. Well, look, it is almost 11 o'clock Eastern time, and I think we've covered things pretty.
Can I give you an update on? I want to give you an update on the Brooks Medicine Hat by-election.
Okay.
So results are starting to roll in.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprising, but kind of interesting when you look down the ballot. So there's, with 18 polls of 76 reporting, Danielle Smith is in the lead with nearly 1,000 votes. But here's where things get interesting, because the NDP threw everything and the kitchen sink at this. And the second place person is the Alberta party leader, Barry Morishita, with 312 votes. And then third is the NDP candidate Gwendolyn Dirk with 230 votes. So the Alberta party really doesn't exist. They don't have fundraising. I didn't even realize they had a leader these days. But they are doing better than the NDP. So you see all this polling that puts the NDP ahead of Danielle Smith province-wide, and that could be true with results from the cities rolling in. Like every other place in the world, we're controlled by the progressive hellscapes of our cities. But this is the NDP are not doing as well as the media said they were going to do in this riding.
Very interesting. I'm looking at that right now. Smith with, again, early numbers still. 61% for Smith, 14% for the NDP. Alberta Independence Party on the map with 2%. And then the Wild Rose Independence Party. I guess there's two different independence parties. Isn't that interesting? Well,
well, I have one very important update for Sheila, and it's not the weather. It's actually the Oilers beat the Lightnings tonight, and I see a bunch of Oiler fans leaving and the Lightning fans here. I'm in downtown Tampa, so that's an update for you.
Well, listen, we didn't do...
I'm doing a lot of winning in Alberta right now.
That's right. We didn't do one thing, and I think we ought to, and that is... and I hope some of these folks are still waiting around. We received a number of super chats tonight, and frankly, I haven't read any since nearly the beginning of the show. So I'm scrolling back, and I don't know if there were a ton, but if someone gives us a super chat tip, I know it's not called a super chat, we should read it.
Okay, I got a few.
I love Western kind, $5. Adios, anti-white Democrats and rhinos. Red wave coming. There is a lot of woke critical race theory, and I think people are sick of it.
Yeah.
Not just white folks, but everybody. People don't like being pitted against each other. That's my view. Fraser McBurney, who I had the pleasure of meeting last month, $10. Today's vote in the USA is a vote between good and evil, life and death, while in Canada we have to wait for 2.5 years to rid ourselves of our drama teacher, Trudeau, Lord Fraser, the Rutherends. Yeah, I mean, Trudeau will stretch it out, I think. Annalisa, 1964, hi there. $20, great coverage tonight. Great to see you, Ezra and Sheila. Beautiful as always. Love the Rebel News and Menzies. Hee hee. And then someone donated
the
$5.
Bloodstream over there.
Yeah, $5 Library Crypto Rebel Studio. Thank you, Rebel News, for all your hard work. Well, it's a pleasure, and I'd like to thank our team in the control room, Efron and Olivia, and there may be others here I don't know. I'm just scrolling through. I think we actually... took all the super chats. I see a note from the studio. We can throw the Yankees interview from tonight. Is that still relevant, Efron?
Yes, I interviewed a congressman that just won re-election.
Well, why are you keeping that hidden? You know, I didn't know you interviewed a congressman. Let's play that video.
I sent it to Efron. He didn't play it.
Okay, well, you know, he sent me a note. Let's take a look. So Yankee hobnobbing with the congressman, and it's just nothing. He didn't. I'm not going to. Oh, I forgot to mention. I talked to a congressman today. Here, let's take a look at Yankee talking to a congressman. Let's take a look.
First, how do you feel about tonight's great victory, your own and Republican Party as a whole?
I mean, I feel really good. it's really because people have seen Republican governance, Republican leadership, and they want more of that in our state. And it also means that we have a responsibility to continue the things that have gotten us here, which is actually standing for the truth, standing for good policy, and making sure people are in charge of their own agency, their own lives. And our job is to get out of their way and to make sure that there are just simple rules that everybody can follow.
And when you go back to Washington, D.C., what do you think the first thing Republicans should do? First order of business, like what's the most important thing to tackle first?
Well, at a federal level, we have to secure our border. We cannot continue to allow fentanyl coming across our borders the way it is. We have to get all this COVID money, all this COVID spending out to begin to slow down inflation and get inflation under control. Those are the two big things that we have to do.
Do you think Joe Biden will be willing to work with Republicans, or he'll continue doing these political speeches where he calls everyone MAGA conservatives and MAGA Republicans?
Well, that remains to be seen, but there's one thing that's crystal clear. If the Republican agenda is a MAGA Republican agenda, well, if Florida's indicative of where the country is going, and it usually is, Joe Biden might want to rethink his policies.
And what can we do to lower gas prices across America?
First thing is we have to make sure that we're not doing anything to stop our oil and gas companies from drilling the wells that they have. Number two, we have to actually get more refineries in the United States. We have to stop shutting them down through regulatory pressure. That's number two. Number three, we need to build more pipelines in the United States. Think of it as if the oil wells itself, that's the heart, but the pipelines are the veins. And we don't have enough veins in the United States for the demand that exists. And we need to respond to the demands of the American people, not try to change their habits.
So, do you think we should build Keystone XL and all the others?
Absolutely, we should build that and more. There's a lot of pipelines that need to be built that just simply haven't been built because areas have just said no, we don't want them because they want to go down this Green New Deal road, but that's not going to help the American people.
And what do you think about Biden's vaccine mandate for non-American citizens to enter the country? Are you aware of that mandate?
He has a vaccine mandate for people coming into the United States?
Yep.
Shoot, that's news to me. It's not happening at the southern border, I can tell you that. Look, these vaccine mandates are ridiculous. They're all a joke. We do not need them. Vaccines are readily available.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do need you to start to vacate the
Perfect.
ballroom.
Thank you so much.
Well,
That
good
guy.
for you. That was great.
Talking pipelines and vaccine mandates. Good for you.
I asked about U.S., but also things that affect our viewers, our Canadian viewers, like pipelines and the vaccine mandates. He wasn't even aware of it, which I understand. He's a congressman in I believe it's in Miami, somewhere around there, and we need to push harder. They don't even know to fight back. There's so many things Biden is doing, and what do you put first on the list?
Are you there?
Yeah,
Tyler,
I'm
are you
sorry.
there?
I was distracted for a second. I was just getting a note from the home front that I had to answer. I apologize for being distracted.
good.
Well, listen, Yankee, you were up at sunrise and you're working past sunset, and I'd like to say thanks to all the people who joined us from around America and Canada and Malaysia. Ian Mouse Chong joining us today from afar. And I think it was a great night for freedom-oriented people. It was a vindication for the anti-lockerdowners like DeSantis. I think it was a repudiation of Biden and his divisive tactics. I think an exciting story is that the Latino voters are no longer able to be taken for granted by the left, and that AOC is more a mascot that white people like as opposed to reflective of what actual Latino voters want. They want Ron DeSantis. They're not impressed with open borders, frankly. There are a few races that I'm just going to have trouble going to sleep before I know the answer to. Georgia is on my mind. There's a song to that effect, and the lead there is narrowed. It's just 18,000. Sheila, I'd like to thank you for co-hosting the whole night. You do a lot of live streams. You're great at it. Yankee, great to see you on location. That's all in addition to your regular job, which isn't even as a reporter, so thanks for doing triple duty today.
It's
to
social media behind the scenes. Well,
Yeah.
I have help with that, so that's why I'm able to go out. So shout out to Angelica that has been, helping on the social media side, so I could be out here tonight.
Right on, and you did well with you made good use of your time. And to our folks in the studio, Olivia and Efrain Flores, Oswaldo Monsanto, if I have
real
that in
MVPs.
order. Thank you very much for working so hard as you always do. And from all of us here at Rebel World headquarters and around the world, to you at home, good night, and keep fighting for freedom.